swing and a drive. Hammered toward left center. Judge on the run. Still going. That ball is gone. Jordan Walker hits a 2-run homer. Jordan Walker goes 5 for 5. Not all of them hard hit, but he put it in play. And a huge day for the Cardinals outfielder.
Yeah, it's good to see him out there and just doing what he did today. Obviously, you're not going to get 5 knocks every day, but he stayed on the ball extremely well, and he just looks like he's having fun out there. His at-bats, there's a calmness to it, and hopefully the thought of knowing, hey, I'm going to run out there every day eases his mind a little bit, so...
That was Ollie Marmol, audio courtesy of Valley Sports Midwest. The other day, Jordan Walker 5 for 5 with Alex Ferrario and Grant Francis. I'm Brandon Kiley. T-Bone out the next couple of days, extending his Labor Day weekend. The only one of us that did not have an extended Labor Day weekend was Alex Ferrario. So thanks for showing up for work today, my man.
You know what? I'm a grinder. That's all I say. I'm a grinder. I don't take days off anymore.
Alex, the big news over the weekend is that Jordan Walker is back, and he's not back in a limited capacity this time around. He is back, and he is a full-time player. This is what Ollie Marmol had to say. Quote, I want to be super clear when I say this. I think Jordan Walker has a chance to be a real game-changing impact player for a very long time for this organization. In order to do that, he's going to need the at-bats. But he's also going to need some real adjustments throughout those at-bats for him to become that player. I do have confidence in his ability to do that. Gould of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, when asked about the switch from Pham to Walker, from a move to the present to playing time in the future, was that a sign of a shift for the team and how it viewed itself in the standings? Quote, no, end quote, according to Ollie Marmol. So, Alex, this is not a changing of the guard. This is not them openly admitting, hey, it's time to turn the page to 2025, according to the manager. This is them saying Jordan Walker can help us right now, and these next 6 weeks of at-bats, 5 weeks of at-bats, going to be really meaningful for him. Alex, what did you make of the news over the weekend that he's coming up, the 5 for 5 day, and the fact that this time he's going to get an extended run of playing time?
My initial thought was excitement, because it's like, it's what I've been asking for since they sent him down the first time back at the beginning of the season, because it's Jordan freaking Walker, and yes, he looked as bad as you can ask for at the beginning of the season, but what Ollie said is the truth. He is a game-changing talent, and he should be at the major league level as an everyday player trying to figure things out, because look, as a 22-year-old, it's not going to be easy for you. You're going to have to figure it out at some point, but then, as it goes with Alex Ferrario, frustration took over my mind and body, because then I hear the quote of like, look, I want to be super clear about this. We believe that Jordan Walker's a game-changing talent. Oh, now we believe it? Because 2 weeks ago, Jordan Walker was only coming up, only used as a platoon bat, was only going to play against left-handed pitchers, and as soon as a right-handed pitcher come in, get that guy out of here. He is not going to do that. And now he's a game-changing talent? And we're saying this, but then we're also saying, well, no, we're not looking for the future. We're trying to win now. I get it. It's coach speak. That's what happens.
I don't think it is. I think they believe that. Which right or wrong, I think that they're still trying to... I think
they probably are, and that's fine. And then what I said on Friday, BK, was you should have been doing this 2 months ago, because if you're going to go for a playoff spot, go for a playoff spot with the guys that are going to be going for a playoff spot in 2025, 2026, 2027. Why are we going for a playoff spot with Tommy Pham?
So I actually didn't mind it. I thought the trade for Tommy Pham was a good one. It obviously has not worked. And so I thought that what they decided to do, I guess late last week, when they put him through waivers, he ended up getting claimed by Kansas City. I also thought that was a smart move by them as well. I think they've individually, a lot of the moves that they have made this season, I could individually say, yeah, that makes sense. But then you put them in like the 10,000-foot view, and it's like, hold on. What are you trying to do here? Mm-hmm. And this is where things get frustrating for me, Alex, because you look at what they've done. Like, we talked so much about this, what was it, 22-game stretch, 23-game stretch, where you're going up against the Brewers and the Dodgers and the Twins and the Padres and the Yankees and the Mariners. And you look through this, and, man, you're a game above 500 in this stretch of games. Like, this is not where you've lost out on the opportunity to make the postseason. Not at all. You've been fine, and for the most part, pretty good, I would say, during the stretch of games against legitimate contenders. What lost you the opportunity was that stretch coming out of the trade deadline. You lose 3 out of 4 against the Chicago Cubs. You lose that game and you just fall completely on your face against the New York Mets. And then you get swept in Cincinnati. That's where you lost your opportunity to make the postseason. And at that point, I would have just turned the page. It's August 15th. You've got an opportunity, an off day going into that series against the Dodgers and say, you know what? We're under 500, 121 games into the season. I think at that point you were like 6 or 7 games back of the wild card. It was very clear at that point. The division was just so far away that it wasn't even worth thinking about any longer. At that point, turn the page to 2025. Let's see what Luke and Baker can do. Let's get Jordan Walker every day at bats. Like, let's go ahead and just all in on the future. They nixed that idea. Said, okay, well, instead of going with the Jordan Walker everyday plan, BK, we're going to go with Jordan Walker exclusively against the handedness that he's worse against. Okay, shouldn't this be about confidence for the young player, though? Like, I get it for your team. This might make some sense. But for the confidence of the kid that has been shattered over the last 6 months, why don't we just go ahead and play him against the handedness that he's better at? And if you need somebody in that role, bring up Luke and Baker, who next year, his role is probably the 26th man on the roster.
Which, by the way, could have also helped this team for a small sample size.
It's becoming increasingly clear they just didn't give themselves the opportunity to find out about some of these guys. Alex, if we had learned 2 months ago what Luke and Baker could do against left-handed pitchers, they might have never needed to trade for Tommy Pham. And, like, that's just one of those things where they give themselves so few outs. Like right now, thank God Vaughn Herrera is actually playing. I thought for sure they would call up a catcher and he would become the third catcher, bench bat opportunity. And I was like, please don't do that. I don't want to have to talk about it again on the radio. But you get into all of this and it's like, does this make sense for Jordan Walker right now? Yes. Did the Tommy Pham trade to me at the time make sense? Sure. Did the Dylan Carlson trade at the time make sense to me? Yeah, I guess so. But when you add it all up, and then you add in Michael Ciani now becoming your everyday center fielder, and Andre Palante potentially losing his spot in the rotation when Lance Lynn and Steven Matz are back as a part of it, there's just a lot of stuff. And it's been now 2 years, essentially, of a lot of stuff that plays into them not taking advantage of the opportunity that is currently presenting.
I think the part that really drove the frustration, and I mean, look, it's been there no matter what, because the Jordan Walker thing goes back to April for me, but it's hearing the comment of, well, I want to be very clear about this. We believe Jordan Walker is a game-changing talent, and he is going to play every single day. Why did it take one call-up where he was a platoon bat and then sending him back down and then stinking again for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden it's, we believe Jordan Walker is a game-changing talent? This should have always been the mindset that Jordan Walker is a game-changing talent, and when he's up here, he's going to be playing every single day. What you saw, and look, I understand it was against a left-handed hitter that he went 5 for 5 against and scored 4 runs with the home run, but he also went up against a righty in that game. Did he struggle in the game prior and the game after with the Yankees and the Brewers? Absolutely. But guess what? A 22-year-old game-changing talent is going to have his ups and downs, and he shouldn't have to worry, is the manager going to pull me out after I have a bad game against a right-handed hitter? He's not doing that now, and I fully expect Jordan Walker to still show signs of progress, but this is the progress that should have been.
Even if he doesn't, Alex, that's fine.
It's a growing period. It's growing pains of this because he's 22 years old, but this should have been a path that we should have been talking about in July or in August, not where he's up for playing for 2 weeks as a left-handed hitter, and then we're sending him right back down. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of moves that this team has made over the last 2 years now where you look at it and you're like, I don't totally understand that. They try to explain it. You're like, okay, sure. I suppose I understand like that perspective. I disagree with it entirely, but I suppose at least there's some thought that went into it. And then you think about it a little bit more and you're like, no, I'm not giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm good here. I think that this is the wrong way to go about it. And that's pretty much where I've landed with a lot of the things that the Cardinals have done over the last couple of seasons. I do want to quickly get to some of the other decisions. They just cannot pull Andre Palante from this rotation. You can't convince me. We'll get into it a little bit more extended coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. But I know he wasn't very good yesterday. It was a rough day for him. A lot of pitchers have had rough days against the Brewers, though, this season, and he's been your best pitcher since July 1st. You don't have to take my word for that. Ollie Marmol said that on KMOX last weekend, where he was asked, hey, I think Andre Palante, kind of given the pretext, I think Andre Palante's been your best pitcher since the All-Star break or whatever, and he said, I agree. I think he has been. You can't go from that to then pulling Palante from the rotation. He has to continue to be a part of it.
Well, you can in the Cardinals world.
In center field, I like Michael Ciani a lot. I think Michael Ciani has a role on this team moving forward if they want him to, if they don't decide to trade him this offseason, because I'm not sure he's ever going to have more value than he has today. I don't totally understand playing Michael Ciani over Victor Scott right now. Because if I'm in the Cardinal situation and now I've got 4 weeks to find out exactly where Victor Scott's at, hey man, the Bat's playing better right now. Don't you want him to find out exactly what kind of adjustments he needs to make in the offseason the way that, Mason Wynn did a year ago, and it helped him going into the offseason? I understand they're doing this stuff with him to help with his first step. He does need to improve in that area. But guess what? That's an offseason thing.
Well, and you know how you improve, BK?
By playing.
Game action, you improve.
Yeah, by going out there and getting in-game reps. And then the other thing they're working on him with is how to steal bases. You know what the best way is to improve on stealing bases? Hey, Vic, every time that you get on right now, because the games aren't all that important for us currently, I know they're 5.5 out. I don't care. Every time you get on first, you're stealing second. Just go, run. And learn what you need to, find tells, find exactly how you can get the first step best way possible. And then when you get back to the dugout, if you're thrown out or if you scored on that, whatever, get down there and talk with the coaching staff to find out and to reassess, okay, what did you do right on that rep? What did you do wrong on that rep? That's where you're going to learn stuff, man. And so it's frustrating to me that this is the way that they're handling it, but whatever. I guess I shouldn't be surprised at this point.
I shouldn't either, BK, and I shouldn't get frustrated with it because it's not good for my health, apparently, with this Cardinals team. But this is the part that the Cardinals always seem to go to. They use we want him to work with our Hall of Fame players so he can get better as an excuse to not play the player.
As if they can't do that when they're playing.
Yes! They used the same thing in the past with Colton Wong for the longest time. We need him to work on his defense or his offensive approach at the plate. They used it with different players in the outfield. Jordan Walker, they used it with. Now they're doing it with Nolan Gorman to get reps. It seems to be the go-to answer for the Cardinals of, he's struggling in the majors? Oh, well, let's sit him so he can work with our Hall of Famers and figure it out. We're working with Victor Scott on the area that he is supposed to be great at. Get him the reps. If he was struggling at the plate, I'd understand it a little bit more. But he's better than Michael Ciani offensively right now.
I don't know if he is or isn't, but I think long-term he can be.
He's shown you the ceiling, which is higher than Michael Ciani, is what I'm trying to say.
Long-term, yeah, I agree. I think right now Ciani's a better hitter currently between the two of them. But I think long-term you would project that there's more of a ceiling, more pop in the bat for Victor Scott than there is for Michael Ciani. And I think Ciani's probably a slightly better defender right now, and maybe even a slightly better baser. I think Ciani's probably, today, the better player of the two.
But it's experience.
Exactly. And Ciani's not your future center fielder. Right. He's not. Victor Scott is. And so this idea that he's going to play all over the outfield, play in left, who is that surfing? Who does it help that Victor Scott's going to be playing in left field? There's going to be no scenario next year where you say to yourself, yeah, our best lineup today includes Victor Scott in left. It's not going to happen in a positive outcome, at least. So it doesn't make sense to me. I hope that they will reassess that. They won't, because that's not what they do. But it's the other thing about where they are at right now is it gives them the opportunity to see these young guys, and they are opting out of that. Michael McGreevy, stay down in AAA. Gordon Graceffo, stay down in AAA. All of the young pitching that you want to see next year, stay down in AAA. Certainly want to get.
Got to get Lynn and Matz in there.
With Alex Ferrario and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. We are going to get more positive throughout the day today. We're going to talk to Armen Keteyian. He's the co-author of a new college football book. He wrote about what it takes to win in college football's era of chaos. We'll talk to him about that coming up at 11:30. But coming up next, Alex, your St. Louis Blues. I hate to say this, but there was some news earlier today that we expected. It does kind of help us understand what the roles are going to be for the Blues defensively this year. We'll pass that along. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care. The weather's starting to cool down a little bit. You're getting to the fall season. So this is going to be the time that you just get to open up those windows and enjoy. But sooner than you believe, it's going to be wintertime. You're going to have to turn on that heater. And if you haven't had Classic Air Care out to check your heater, well, it's time to do so. Be a part of their maintenance agreement, because what it is, twice a year, before you turn your heater on, before you turn your air conditioner on, they come out, they check it, they clean it, they fine-tune it, they make sure that it's good to go to get you through the next upcoming season. And the best part about it is, if you have issues with your HVAC system, with your heater, during the frigid cold or during the blistering hot heat, you're top of the priority because you're a part of that maintenance agreement with Classic Air Care. I've been a part of this maintenance agreement since 2016, and it has helped me out significantly multiple times when something has gone wrong. There's over 14,000 of them in the area, which means they've got tons of technicians to get out there and take care of your HVAC system or heater today. Give them a call today, or you can schedule online at Classic Air Care. That's classicaircare.com.
We did get some news earlier today from the St. Louis Blues. It looks like Torey Krug, as expected, honestly, is going to be missing the entirety of the 2024 season. He's going to be out after deciding to get surgery on the pre-arthritic condition he's been dealing with Alex Ferrario and Grant Francis. I am Brandon Kiley. T-Bone out today. He'll be back in on Thursday. Alex, we've been waiting for this news. It was expected to come sometime right before training camp, so this is around the timeline that we were anticipating. Torey Krug going to miss the entirety of the season. He'll be on LTIR this year. We kind of expected that, but now we get to have the conversation that comes as a result of it. Who takes on that role? Because Torey Krug played a lot of minutes for the Blues last year, for better or worse, and he did so both at 5-on-5 and maybe more importantly on the power play. Last year among defensemen, here's how they ranked for the Blues in terms of the time on ice on the power play. Torey Krug played 225 minutes on the power play last year. Scott Perunovich was second on the team with 119 minutes on the power play. And then it was Justin Falk with 110, Colton Parayko with 32, and Nick Leddy with 12. No other defenseman played more than 2 minutes on the power play last year for the St. Louis Blues. So, Alex.
Sorry, Marco Scandella.
He did play minute 25.
Oh.
Alex, as you look at the Blues heading into this season and you think about the role that, if healthy, you would have anticipated Torey Krug maintaining for them, who fills it in your mind?
I think if we're talking 5-on-5, that's going to be Philip Broberg. I think Broberg and Falk are going to be the pairing down the stretch, and that one is going to be kind of your offensive pairing that you can utilize with a guy who has the ability to kind of close down plays. So that one in itself, I think, settles where they're at. The power play one, I do believe, is the most intriguing. I also think Blues fans are sleeping on the guy that should be in that role, and there shouldn't be any question about it. It's Justin Falk. I think a lot of people like me originally got excited about Philip Broberg and thinking, oh, well, this is your power play quarterback number one. But it's that new fancy thing that it's like, oh, my gosh, we haven't had this since Alex Pietrangelo. But you're getting way too excited because I was that way. Justin Falk, prior to the St. Louis Blues, was the number one guy on Carolina's power play. And think about it. The time in St. Louis, he's never had the opportunity to be the number one guy. First, it was Alex Pietrangelo in his first year here. Petro was the number one guy. And then for the next 4 years, Torey Krug was a part of this team. So Falk was always kind of the fallback guy. He'd slot in every once in a while, but he was never the number one guy. From 2014, or the 2013-14 season to the 2018-19 season, so it was his last 6 years with the Carolina Hurricanes, among defensemen who have scored points on the power play, in that time frame, he's 19th with 79 points. So, like, there are some guys that have significantly higher numbers than him, but, like, these are the guys that Justin Falk has better numbers than on the power play in that stretch. Talking about Nick Leddy, who for the longest time was with the New York Islanders as a number one guy, Morgan Riley with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Seth Jones, Alex Pietrangelo, Dougie Hamilton. Like, he's up there in terms of guys who have points. And 32 of those 79 points were goals. You know what that tells me? He's got a shot-first mentality. So I think the guy that's going to be the power play, if you want to call it quarterback, I think he's just going to be the guy that can establish the shot. That's going to be Justin Falk, and I think he's going to start the season as the first quarterback.
It's going to look different.
Absolutely,
it's going to look different. I mean, you just can't operate the power play the same way with Falk as you did with Krug, and maybe that's a good thing, all things considered, given what we saw from the power play a year ago and how bad it was for the majority of the season. But it's going to look a lot different, and it's going to have a trickle-down effect because Krug was your number one power play quarterback, and Falk was previously the number two power play quarterback. So now you need somebody to take over Falk's old role. So maybe that opens up opportunities for Colton Parayko. Maybe it is Broberg. Maybe it does become Nick Leddy. I think this is going to be an open-ended question going into training camp to find out who fits best, because so much of this, as we've seen in previous years, is about chemistry.
Yeah.
Can you find the holes that exist for the players that are on your specific unit? And that could be different depending on who is out on the ice on you, depending on which team you're on, depending on the scheme, whatever. But that's something that I think we're going to have to find out as we go into training camp. I do think you're right. I think it's going to be Falk on the top unit. And I don't really feel great about it. It's one of my big questions heading into the season, not just because of Falk. Like, he's fine. I think he'll be fine. I don't know about the unit in general. Like, I would like to have somebody that can maximize the potential of the unit, and I don't know that Falk's necessarily that guy. But I don't think they have a better option.
Yeah, and maybe Broberg is this kind of hidden gem that we don't know about because he's never really gotten power play time at the NHL level. We'll find that out once you get through training camp and some of the preseason games. But I do think, because we got a text on the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618 that says Falk is terrible. He's a do-nothing defenseman. Okay, well, I do think people are forgetting what Falk...
I want to push myself away from that ally.
Just reel it in a little bit, as BK likes to say. I do think people, though, are forgetting what he did for the previous two seasons, not just this last one. This last one, he was hurt a majority of it. But the year prior, 50 points, which was a career high, and 10 of those points came on the power play. The year prior to that, he had 47 points. It was a plus 41 with Norris Trophy votes. So, like... And mind you, he was doing all of this playing with Torey Krug, who I think we all can agree defensively isn't the shabbiest out there. So
he's a liability.
Yeah, I think with Justin Falk, you're right. It's going to come down to chemistry. It's going to come down to, because if you are that defenseman, you not only have to be able to establish the shot, but you have to make the right passes in tight situations and keep plays alive at the blue line, which Justin Falk's not the biggest guy, but he's got a hell of a slap shot, and he's got experience on a power play, which I think is the important factor into it. But I do think we're sleeping a little bit on what Justin Falk's level of potential is just because of what he did last year, which, I mean, he was injured for a majority of it, and frankly, things just weren't good for a lot of those defensemen last year.
I hope you're right.
I do think you've seen the worst of Justin Falk in the last 2 seasons.
Just like we did that with Parayko, too.
Right, but at the same time, like, the majority of his time over the last 2 years has been on a pairing with Torey Krug. And I've said this before, like, I think Torey Krug and Justin Falk can both be fine players, but not on the same team, and definitely not on the same pairing. And so when you have those two players playing on the same pairing, they're not playing well off of each other, and they're both going to look worse than what they would be without each other. So I think if Justin Falk can be on this team and not have Torey Krug as his pairing mate, especially when it comes to 5-on-5, I think he's going to be a well improved. And I think on the power play, I think Justin Falk's a fine offensive player. But I think it's just when you have Torey Krug with him, they just don't complement each other. So I think you're going to see an improved Justin Falk this season.
Do you guys think there's any chance Perunovic takes one of these roles? Because that's the one other guy that I think is at least deserving of mention, because at his best, this was supposed to be his role. If Krug went down for any extended period of time, the expectation as of a year ago probably would have been, oh, well, clearly Perunovic is just going to take that on. Third pairing defenseman, try to play him as few minutes as possible at 5-on-5, and then you extract all of the value out of him on power play time. Is that still in your mind? Is that an expectation going into this season, or has that changed for you?
It's changed. I do think there's a chance for Scott Perunovic to rechange people's minds. I just don't know who he's getting playing time over. And unless this team's going to go with 7 defensemen, which why in the hell would you for how many forwards this team has? Who's he getting playing time over? He's not playing over Leddy or Broberg or Ryan Suter. Does that mean that he's playing over a Matt Kessel and somebody's playing on their offhand? Because I think that's a liability depending on how you put players out there. I think there's a real chance that he could impress a training camp, and now like he legit has competition that he has to fight to earn a spot with. And if he makes the team,
I think you're right.
If he makes the team, you put him on the number 1 unit, no questions asked.
Do you?
I think so.
Like, how are you getting him into your 6?
That's the question, though. I mean, if I'm going off and you have an incredible training camp, he is playing over Matt Kessel, and either he or Ryan Suter shifts to the right side.
I can't do that. You can't have a better training camp, and that's what gets you into the top 6 after what I saw from Kessel a year ago. Well, I think we got way out over our skis on what Matt Kessel is going to be long-term. I think he's a really nice third-pairing defenseman who can play up when needed. But in a best-case scenario, he's probably your third-pair right-handed defenseman. I can't just eliminate all of that I saw on real NHL games based upon whatever we see for a couple of weeks from Scott Perunovic.
And if you put Scott Perunovic in, you're playing that third pair less, which means you're playing your top pair more, which you're not divvying things up. And here's the thing for Scott Perunovic. He's got to be better on the power play. He refused to take shots last year. Yep. It was always passes. And I'm not going to play you on a power play if you're not going to shoot the puck. So, you have to. My guess is Scott Perunovic is going to play in almost every single preseason game. You're going to have to be the best player on the ice every single game that you play in for this team to even consider you on your starting 6.
I'm with you. I think at this point, everybody's going to have their fair chance at training camp and preseason. Doug Armstrong said it, like, players that normally in the past have been comfortable knowing that they have a spot on the roster going into the regular season maybe shouldn't be as comfortable this season going into training camp because there's so much competition. I think Scott Perunovic is going to have his fair chance. Do I expect him to maximize it and end up on the roster? No, because he hasn't shown us that he can in the past. But if he has a hell of a training camp and a hell of a preseason and he makes it to where they can't leave him off the roster, then yeah, he has a chance to make it. But given the competition that is there, I don't see it happening.
That's Grant Francis. He's Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley. One thing we've seen a lot of on the text line at 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. You guys can check us out on YouTube as well. The Graveyard Chat off and running over there. YouTube.com/101ESPN-STL. A lot of people bringing up the possibility of sitting Suter and going with Perunovic over him. I'd be shocked. Genuinely shocked if that's the start of the season. Now, by December, could that be the case? Sure. Absolutely. I mean, it's a no-risk proposition with Suter. If it ends up, comes in, doesn't play well for the first couple of months of the season, and you say, you know what, we're going to go young here. We're going to get somebody else some opportunities because it's not going well. Sure, then you make the switch. But starting game 1, I'd be As shocked about that as I would be with just about anything, I do not think that's the direction that they end up going.
I think
there.
Ryan Suter is more impactful for this team in the midst of their retool than Scott Perunovich is. Just from the role that he's going to play with your younger defenseman, I don't know if I'm sitting him for a guy who could have the potential of being a good power play weapon.
In 15 minutes, we'll get to questions and answers, but coming up next, Armen Keteyian is a co-author of a new college football book. It's out right now. It's called The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. I want to talk to him about what he learned in the reporting for this book and how it applies to programs like the University of Missouri, for example. We'll talk to Armen Keteyian about that next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK. Do you wake up and feel like you don't have the same amount of energy that you did 3, 5, 7 years ago? Are you running around with the kiddos at home thinking to yourself, man, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I could literally go take a nap right now. If those are some symptoms that you're feeling, they might be able to help you out over at Victory Men's Health. It's time to unlock your inner champion. They did it for me. They can do the same thing for you as well. When I went in, I was telling them, hey, listen, I feel like I kind of wind down quicker than I once did. I don't feel like I'm getting the same amount out of my workouts as I used to. And they said, okay, let's check it out. Let's see what you've got. So they did a micronutrient lab for me, and they found out, hey, you got some vitamin deficiencies here, and they've got some things that they can do supplement-wise that can help me out, make me feel better day to day. That is exactly what they did. I feel better as a result. They unlocked my inner champion. Whether it's something like that, low testosterone, erectile dysfunction, weight loss goals that you're not being able to meet on your own, they can help you out at Victory Men's Health. 4 great locations across the St. Louis area and online at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Over the weekend, the Cardinals took 2 of 3 from the Yankees in the Bronx, but yesterday they fell 9-3 in Milwaukee to the Brewers. They're back to 69-69, 500 on the season. So they look to go over 500 once again as they're back in Milwaukee. It'll be Steven Matz coming off the IL for the Cardinals getting the start, going up against Aaron Savali for the Brewers, and first pitch will be at 6:40. And other news this morning for the Blues, Torey Krug will have surgery on his left ankle. He will miss the entirety of the 2024-25 season. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alex, we've been talking so much about the changing dynamics in college football over the last few years. They've played a significant role in the rise of Eli Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers. And Armen Keteyian wrote a book, a great book. He's a co-author of The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. It is available now wherever books are sold. And he joins us now via the 101 ESPN hotline. Armen, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today, giving us a little bit of insight into the latest goings-on in college football. For you, as you began the reporting of this book, what got you most interested in kind of getting the deep dive into everything that has taken place in the recent probably decade or so in college football? What led you to this?
Well, that's a good question, because Jeff Benedict and I had done a book back in 2013 that came out called called The System, which was a deep dive into the state of college football at that period of time. And then when this book was presented to me, at least the proposal for the book was presented to me, this was in 2022. And all you had to do was kind of look out your window and see between NIL, the portal, realignment, the expanded college playoffs, rising coaching salaries, it had all the elements of the system, but it was like the system was child's play compared to what we were witnessing. And John Talty, who's my co-author on this, John is really SEC based and a national writer for CBS Sports. And so he was living it day to day in the SEC. And I just knew from relationships that I had previously at places like Michigan and the NCAA headquarters that if we got on the ground and got behind the scenes and could portray the chaos in a way where you really felt it as a reader, almost day to day, hour to hour, that it would be the kind of book that I would be interested in. And so that's what we did. I mean, we basically, I built up a certain level of trust, guys, over the last, counting them, 40 years in various places. And John has similar trust, as he's about half my age, but is very well respected within the SEC. And we're able to get into places, whether it's Michigan, Arizona. You have Jimmy Sexton is a chapter in our book called The Power Broker, the most powerful agent in the business. Nick Saban, my relationship, having done with that Alabama program, having done a 60 Minutes piece. So I just like big, complicated storytelling, and I didn't have to look too far to find it in this.
Armen, the one thing that fascinated me when I started to kind of dive into this book is the physical and emotional toll that is taken on the coaches in college football, because now with NIL, with transfer portals, there's so much on the line for these coaches. What did you learn in that aspect of kind of talking to everyone that you were able to interview?
Well, that's a great point. I mean, the book is called The Price for a reason. And yes, the first thing you think of when you think of the price is money. And is money the predominant driving factor right now in college football? I don't think there's any question that it is. All you have to do is look at, why Oregon and Washington, USC and UCLA left a 108-year-old conference to go to the Big Ten. It was driven by nothing but greed and self-interest. But you're so right. There's the financial cost, but what really attracted me and John was And very early on, you could see it. It's the physical, it's the emotional, and it's the psychological toll that's being taken on and still being taken on everybody who makes a livelihood in college football and college sports, particularly major college sports. But and it's from college presidents to athletic directors to conference commissioners to certainly assistant coaches, compliance people, the NCAA investigators. I don't think anybody is immune from it. And it's just withering after a while. It's completely exhausting. And the stakes have never been higher. On the field, I think the product has never been better. With the expanded playoffs now, I think the interest is going to go absolutely through the roof. But behind the scenes and in people's offices and sitting in there with them, one quick example, Jed Fish was at Arizona, chapter called Raising Arizona, taking a team that was a doormat in the Pac-12 to beating Oklahoma in this January in the Alamo Bowl in just 3 years. Jed told me he didn't see his wife for basically the first year and a half that he was in Arizona. He barely saw his kids. And he finally had to say to himself, this isn't working. And he would see Amber from like 5:30 in the morning to 6:30 in the morning. And they'd have a cup of coffee, and then he would go to the office. Well, that tells you pretty much what you need to know about, the price.
Armen, I'm curious because there are some schools, Arizona being one of them, that have found their way through this and have been able to, I don't want to say exploit necessarily, but they've been able to accelerate their program build because of the rules that currently exist for them. One of the schools in our backyard is Missouri, and they have done a really good job with NIL. They have put things in a way, whether it's with the legislation within the state or just having a coach that's a very good salesman, and they've been able to build as a result of that. They've used the transfer portal in a way that works for them. And so I'm curious, because you just talked about some of the negatives that are unintended consequences of this kind of an era within college football, but we've also seen the positive for some program. Yeah. How do you kind of look at both sides of that?
Yeah, I think Mizzou is a perfect example. I mean, you have a charismatic head coach. You've got a fan base that's passionate. You have an ability to draw athletes from other programs into your backyard. So it's an equalizer in a lot of ways. If it is done in concert with an athletic director and a university president and a board of regents or a board of trustees that believes that that's the right path. And if you're not on that path right now, I think you're making a mistake. There has to be this symbiotic relationship between the football program, the athletic department, certainly the collective, and the sprawling booster network. What was interesting about Jed is when he got there, his first priority was rebuilding the facility. It was like old school. They put $14 million into that. Arizona doesn't have, one could argue, it's an older, less more suspicious fan base when you say, oh, we need $200,000 to get a new cornerback. They're thinking, well, I could put my name on a tunnel or somewhere in the locker room, and I would feel better about that. It took Jed countless hours and flying all over the country to convince an Arizona booster network that this was the only way to go. But they struggled with it in the beginning. His first year, he told the athletic director, Dave Heeke, he goes, just whatever's on the internet, whatever's legal that you find out, just tell them that's what we're doing. I have no idea. I got to build a program. And I think by the year 3, what happened at Arizona, and it's really rare right now, T-Mac, who just got the AP Player of the Week, and I've seen him, the wide receiver, he is an incredible jaw-dropping talent. He stayed at Arizona. Noah Fatita stayed at Arizona, the quarterback, Jacob Manu, the linebacker. It's a Polynesian culture there, and it's family first, and that's what Jed was selling. And I know for a fact that, Ohio State put $2 million on the table to get Noah and T-Mac to transfer to Columbus, and they stayed there even after Jed left to go to Washington, because that's a brotherhood there. That's a family. And you can argue what Michigan had beyond all the other machinations with the sign stealing, that was a brotherhood. That was guys that came back, and I know that Harbaugh came back. He turned down Walmart money to become the head coach of the Denver Broncos, to come back to that 2023 team, because he had so many players that did the same thing. They didn't go into the portal. They didn't go into the pros. And when you look at Blake Corum and you look at J.J. McCarthy and Zach Zinner and all these other guys, Sanisto, I mean, they are Michigan men. And I think what Eli's got going on, if you have that culture, if you can somehow overcome the jealousies and the chemistry problem that comes when you bring money into a locker room, and there's a greater good there, a bigger belief in something, then you have an advantage right now, because you not only have portal, you have NIL, you have the booster network, you have the SEC, but you have something that a lot of teams are struggling with right now, because when you put money in the locker room with 18, 19, and I'm not talking a little bit of money, I'm talking in some cases, $500,000 or more, $1 million or more for a quarterback, it changes things. And that culture is so critical, because that's what you win with. Ultimately, you still have to win with a culture. And I think we saw some of that, a little bit of that with LSU, where Brian Kelly was complaining about not closing out a game. That's a culture issue. And, we'll see as the season goes on. But, there's just so many things that are these headwinds that are battering the sport. But when you can get it right and there's a greater good involved, I think you have such an advantage right now.
Armen, we'll get you out of here on this. Armen Keteyian is our guest here on 101 ESPN, co-author of The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. You can follow him on Twitter at his name, at Armen Keteyian, ARMENKETEYIAN. You can find all of his information over there, and you can find his book wherever books are sold. Armen, I guess the final question that I've got for you is kind of projecting this forward, because you mentioned you had another book about a decade ago now, and it's almost completely, in terms of what it was about, the system, right, obsolete. And now 10 years later, we're writing about this. 10 years from now, what do you think this looks like? Does it look similar to what we're operating with right now, or is it completely changed in a decade?
If I had to put my life on the line, right now, that crystal ball is really cloudy. If you ask people in power, I can't tell you how many times John and I heard the words, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't know. I think we're in a rest stop on the highway to somewhere. Where that destination finally lands, I'm not sure. But if you're projecting out and you look at what is driving the sport, money and self-interest, if that continues, I don't think there's any question there'll be a breakaway league. And it'll be the Big Ten and it'll be the SEC making the decisions, because they're the power two right now, far and away. And that's the kind of thing. Where are you? How many schools? Is it 48? Is it 32, 48, 64, 16 across the country, north, south, east, and west? And then who makes it and who doesn't? That's what's going to be fascinating. But if they don't put a framework in place on NIL, and I think they have to close one of the portals, because it's just driving coaches up the wall for every reason in the world that's absolutely correct. Then there's no telling where this is going to go, because if the SEC decides they're going to break away, and Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey now are, they're singing Kumbaya together. So we'll see. How many come from the Big 12? How many make it out of the ACC? Notre Dame, okay, we get that. But it's going to be interesting, because if you're in also-ran, if you're on the outside looking in, it's going to I believe it'll have an absolutely devastating effect on programs across the country. And that means, non-rev sports, Title IX, more lawsuits, more chaos. And so I hope they put somewhere down the line really quickly here, like people like Charlie Baker, the president, who's been pushing for it. The greater good is what's going to ultimately settle things down. Getting to that greater good is going to be a rough road, I think.
And as we know, Armen, that is always the driving force, the greater good in college athletics. That's definitely been the case. Looking forward to the book.
You had me there for a second. Really? You know what? You're right. And then I'm like, wait a second.
No, great point, BK, except literally never once in the history of college athletics has that actually been the case.
Like, and I'm not the, I don't fall for that stuff very often. I'm like, oh my God, that's so sweet. And then I'm like, what?
You're like, hey, have you not read any of the book? Did you not prepare for this interview at all?
Yeah.
Armen, appreciate the time as always, man. The book is fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. We'll look forward to the next one 10 years from now as well. So thanks for hopping on with us today, my friend.
I'll be in a wheelchair. I'll talk to you then. Bye.
Sounds good. That's Armen Keteyian, co-author of The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. You can find that book wherever books are sold. Alex, I find the entire subjects to be fascinating. We've spent countless segments on it here over the last few years on BK and Ferrario. The college sports landscape in general has changed so much. I was in college 10 years ago. I was covering Mizzou day to day, and the way that things were operating then, I remember like Mizzou basketball got put on probation during the Frank Haith era, Alex, because they had guys that were like doing a side job during the summer. And now guys are just getting paid, $1 million because they want them to be the quarterback of their university.
Kid offered $2 million to transfer to a different team.
Yeah, like that's just, and it's all legal now. It's all above board. Luther Burden makes God only knows how much money to play football at the University of Missouri, and it's worth it. So check out the book. It's well worth your time. Armen Keteyian previously did a bunch of work for 60 Minutes. He is as plugged into college football as you're going to find anywhere, so it's well worth your time. Appreciate Armen for joining us today. Questions and answers coming up next. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers from the 314. Alex, we were just talking about this. Eli Drinkwitz getting ready to take the podium. Mizzou, it looks like, is 10th this week in the AP poll that was just announced. So officially a top 10 team in the country because Florida State's terrible. So this is the question from the 314. Guys, does BC's win against Florida State help Mizzou with their strength of schedule? It could. It's possible. I think a lot of what happened last night, though, was about Florida State and not so much about Boston College. I don't think Boston College is going to be bad, necessarily. They've got a really good coach in Bill O'Brien. I think he's better suited for the college game than the NFL game. But I think what you saw in that one was really about Florida State. That team is just... It's horrific.
They're bad everywhere. There's not an area that I feel like they could figure this out. I mean... Your quarterback is...
They have run for... Their leading rusher on the season has 50 yards.
Yeah, because their offensive line is trash. If you're either running back is having to go through the trenches 5 yards before the line of scrimmage, or your quarterback is in scramble mode 24/7, and defensively, you're always on the field because offensively you can't do anything.
And defensively, you can't stop the run.
Yeah.
Your front seven is horrible.
How much longer does Norvell make it?
Man, I was talking to a buddy yesterday.
Because you lost to Boston College and Georgia Tech.
If they had made it to the playoff last year, which it wasn't Norvell didn't do anything wrong. His quarterback got hurt. Otherwise, they would have made it into the playoff. I think you buy yourself a decent amount of goodwill. Being this bad this quickly coming off of that season, I mean, would you be shocked if he ends up getting fired at the end of the year?
No, not at all. After this start, I would be shocked if he makes it through the whole year.
Man.
I mean... You got to have a significant turnaround after losing to those two schools at the beginning of your season when I think a lot of people were expecting them to be a playoff team.
They've still got to play. Clemson probably lose that game. Miami probably lose that game. Notre Dame probably lose that game. So that's at least 3 more losses. This week they play against Memphis. Dude, that is not a gimme. No. SMU, not a gimme on the road. North Carolina, I think they'll probably lose that game. There's a decent chance they finish below 500 this season and miss out on a bowl game, much less a playoff.
The last 4 weeks, Norvell will be gone and they'll have another coach.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 636. Guys, has your ETA for Quinn Matthews changed at all since 3 months ago with him flying through the system? Of course, yeah. I think at some point next year, you should expect Quinn Matthews to be a part of the Major League rotation.
You should, but I should have seen Michael McGreevy for an extended stretch by now, and the Cardinals haven't done it. So if it's the same regime in place...
I feel like it's a little different, though, because of the success that Quinn Matthews is having. You haven't had anybody else have this kind of success in your system. Typically, the Cardinals rush guys to the big leagues when they're having a lot of success down in the minors. Think Jordan Walker, think Victor Scott, Nolan Gorman, even Matthew Liberatore agreed was kind of...
Well, that one, I think, was because Randy Arozarena kept tearing it up and we got to get this.
But I would expect Quinn Matthews to be a part of the rotation at some point next year.
Yeah, I think you're probably talking August or September. That's when my expectations would be there. I don't think it's before that.
From the 314, guys, do you think that Missouri will lose any games in their first 5 this season?
Buffalo
the next
looks
4,
tough.
You got Buffalo, Boston College, and Vanderbilt, and then Texas A&M on the road. I have them going 5-0 in that stretch. If you want to include Massachusetts and just say, hey, start the season 6-0, I could see that as well. That's not a game that's going to change your mind on that. But Buffalo, Boston College, Vandy, Texas A&M, Massachusetts, how many losses do you guys see in that for Mizzou?
I don't see one. I might be a little over my skis, but I liked everything that I saw, and everything I saw was Brady Cook not being in line with his wide receivers, and that is going to happen at some point. I think the first time we're talking about a potential loss is that Alabama game.
I agree. I think Mizzou is a better team than Notre Dame, and Notre Dame was able to go into Texas A&M and take care of business, so I think Mizzou should be able to do the same.
I do think there will be some close calls. I think that you could see, whether it's Boston College, Vandy, or Texas A&M, maybe multiple out of those 3. I think they will be the types of games where you're like, can you just please put this away? Can you please extend this lead, stop being up by 10, get up by 17, get up by 21, find a way to put this away so we don't have to think about it any longer. I think there's going to be some frustrating moments in maybe 1, 2, or 3 of those games, but I do think they finish by winning every single one of them over the next 6 weeks or so. All right, he's Alex Ferrario. That is Tanner Hendrickson. That is Grant Francis. Tanner Hendrickson is out today. He'll be back in on Thursday here on the show. I'm going to get that right by tomorrow.
I did it to Bradford. I called Bradford Grant, so It happens, man.
It happens to the best of us. If you guys want to get involved in the show, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to do so. Coming up next, Paul Goldschmidt. He wants to play in 2025. He's going to be here in St. Louis. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK with Alex Ferrario for our friends over at Circa Sports in Illinois. Alex, it is time. It is time to start putting your futures bets in on the Circa Sports app in Illinois. Now's the time to do so. You're getting better odds over there, and they've got all kinds of stuff that you can bet on, whether it's an MVP, you want to bet on the team to win the Super Bowl, or you want to be like me. Who's going to finish the season as the league's highest scoring team? Alex, I can't even believe this is real. I felt like I was dreaming last night as I saw it. The Chiefs are 18-1
Knew it.
to be the highest scoring team in the league. For context, the Lions have the best odds on this at 11.5-1. I'm getting the Chiefs with the same odds as the Bears or the Bengals. Give me that, please. Patrick Mahomes, 3 wide receivers that are good, still got Travis Kelce, an improved offensive line. I'm going to go ahead and take that, and I'm betting on something else as well. The last winless team in the NFL this season, give me the New Orleans Saints. This is what their schedule opens up as. They're losing this week against the Carolina Panthers. And then after that, it's Dallas, Philly, Atlanta, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Denver, LA. They might go 0-8 to start out the season. Give me the Saints at 20-1 to be the last winless team this year as well.
You need to get on these future bets right now. Hell, turn them into those big Ferrario parlays because you're bringing in the most money possible. And Circa Sports Illinois isn't limiting you based off of your winnings. Download it today and get started with the NFL season. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Paul Goldschmidt's heating up, Alex, and it's right in time for the Cardinals to start some negotiations with him for potentially playing in 2025. With Alex and Grant, I'm BK. Alex, Paul Goldschmidt in his last 5 games is 9 for 20 with 6 doubles. The power is starting to come out in a way that it hasn't for the majority of the season. And over the weekend, he talked to John Denton of Cardinals.com saying, quote, "Yeah, I want to play next year. I want to continue to play." He then continued, "Actually, I haven't let any of my thoughts get past that statement right there. I owe it to this team and this organization to give them everything this year, and that's 100% where my thoughts are. But yes, I plan to keep playing. I want to keep playing, but I haven't thought about next year a lot. For me, dedication is trying to help us win now, and I'll worry about the future when it comes." He then continued along. This is all via John Denton of MLB.com. Quote, "After the year, I'll make more adjustments. Sometimes it just takes time, and I think I've created some bad habits with my swing that I haven't been able to break yet. One of those things that I've done in my career is just be consistent. I haven't had maybe the top-end talent that some guys have, but I've been consistent, and I think I'm still capable of doing that. That's on me. There are no excuses," end quote. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Paul Goldschmidt says he's planning to play in 2025. Prior to this, there were legitimate questions as to whether or not that would be the case. This season, he has been about 5% below league average offensively. For the first time in his career, he is batting below .250 for a season. His slugging percentage is .410, which is 40 points lower than at any point previously in his major league career. He says he's open to playing in 2025. Should the Cardinals be open to a reunion with Goldie in 2025?
I wouldn't count it out if I'm the Cardinals, but there's a criteria to it. And this is the part that I don't believe the Cardinals will do, which essentially takes me to don't re-sign him. The criteria would be, if you're going to bring Paul Goldschmidt back, you bring Paul Goldschmidt back as what he is, a older veteran who still might have something in the tank for you, and you utilize him in that role. Kind of like what you just did with Matt Carpenter, only you might be able to use Paul Goldschmidt more against certain types of pitchers because he's had success this season against left-handed pitchers. The right-handed pitcher. It was right-handed or left-handed I think he's had more success with.
Goldie, left.
Yeah, it was left. Okay. He is going out there as your first baseman or a DH against those left-handed pitchers, while Alec Burleson is going out there against those right-handed pitchers. Paul Goldschmidt does come back as a platoon bat, and guess what? If he does this for a stretch, you play him a little bit more because you've got the DH spot and you could utilize it more. But Paul Goldschmidt, at least is performing to the level that I look at and I say, could he be a complementary piece to a team that could have success next season? Maybe. But the reason I don't think the Cardinals should is because I know how this goes. The Cardinals see a guy who gets hot down the stretch and they say, there's still more in the tank. And I do believe, tinfoil theory, there is a little bit in the Cardinals' mind saying, if we don't bring Paul Goldschmidt back and he goes elsewhere to have success, how bad of a blemish does that put on our team that we couldn't figure out a veteran? No. So I'd be very concerned that the Cardinals view this as, well, bring him back and we'll start him consistently, and then you're back into the same issue you were this year.
Yeah, I don't really care at this point if it's a bad look for them or not if he goes on to have success elsewhere. I kind of anticipate that next year he'll probably have success the way that the Brewers' first baseman, Rhys Hoskins, has had this year. He wasn't a bad player for Philly. He got hurt, and then he ended up having to kind of figure some things out. He did that this year. He's been a good player for the Brewers, and he's helped him out. I think Goldie could go on to do that somewhere. Like, if Goldie was in Houston, I think he'd have a good season next year. Really. I think he'd be a perfectly fine player, and I think they'd go about it the right way. And he's in a lineup where he's protected by so many other, like, top-end talents that if Goldie's batting 7th every day for them and he adds a little bit of pop to their lineup, they live with it. Also, they've got the short porch. That would probably be a good stadium for him to play in. If he went down to Arizona, they decided, hey, we're not re-signing Christian Walker in the offseason. We're going to bring back Goldie on a 1-year, $15 million deal. That, to me, makes a lot of sense as well. You're not at that place as an organization anymore, man. You're not at the place where you need to go out there and sign a 37-year-old veteran coming off of a down year who you're not sure what you're going to get out of him. I would just rather have Alec Burleson become my everyday first baseman. And it's why it's kind of frustrating to me the way they're handling this down the stretch. I don't think Goldie should be playing every day right now. I think you should be giving more opportunities to Alec Burleson at first or to Luken Baker at first. Burleson would be my preferred option, but whatever they decide to do there. Hell, platoon it right now. Yeah. With those two guys at that specific position, I don't know why you need to go this route again. If they're going to go into this offseason, and Grant, we've got this audio ready to go. John Mozeliak was on with the Cardinals Radio Network over the weekend. If they're going to go into the offseason limited in terms of the funds that they have to be able to spend, Alex, don't go use that on a guy like Paul Goldschmidt.
Our performance, our record is probably indicative of, why we're starting to see smaller crowds. But, it's something that, from a business standpoint and a strategy standpoint, we're going to have to try to understand what the future looks like from that standpoint. Obviously, we know we're going to have an uphill climb with what the TV market's going to look like moving forward. And so, we're going to have our challenges. And so, I think our side's going to have to recalibrate a little bit. And I'm still hopeful, though, our fan base will support us and appreciate what we're trying to do. But, I can understand that level of frustration, too.
My full expectation at this point, based on everything we've heard from the Cardinals and all the reporting that's been done, Alex, is that they're going to be taking a pretty sizable step back in terms of payroll next year. That does not equate to giving Paul Goldschmidt a decent size deal. It just doesn't. It doesn't make sense for this team. You have internal options that you can go with at first base. I'm not saying you got to tank. I would not do that. I don't think the Cardinals need to do that. But can you go a little younger? Can you get 70 to 80% of the production next year out of Burleson and whoever else you decide to use at first base that you would have out of Goldie for like 10% of the cost? Yeah, in fact, I think there's a pretty good chance that they end up being more productive at that spot than Goldschmidt would be for you next year. So I wouldn't bring him back. And honestly, I wouldn't even probably negotiate with him. I would just say, hey, listen, Goldie, we appreciate everything. It's just not going to work for us. We hope that you go on to have success elsewhere, and I hope you find a great landing spot where you can have your opportunity to go win a World Series, because it's the one thing that's really missing from his resume.
I'm with you. I think the one thing that this Cardinals team needs to embrace is the fact that we've got a whole lot of young players that we need to figure out who they actually are. And bringing back a Paul Goldschmidt puts this team in a position where they have this false belief that they can still contend, to where if you take Paul Goldschmidt off of the table and things don't look well, then you can fully embrace hey, we're making sure that these guys that are a part of our team and our future are going to get into the winning mindset. And I just think you need to it's like when we love our jobs, but if you're in a bad job right now, and you're like, I don't want to quit because I don't have anything else. Sometimes you have to pull the plug, and so that you don't feel like you have that fallback there. It feels like the Cardinals always have the fallback of, but we've got these veterans who have MVP potential that can help us win. And it feels like sooner or later you need to pull that off of the table. It's like Mo trading players away so that the manager won't play them. Sooner or later you got to take that toy away so that the focus can just be on, hey, Alec Burleson, everyday first baseman. Again, I don't think it's bad if Paul Goldschmidt is here as for a cheaper price as a bench bat.
I actually do think it's bad because there's no future there with him.
Let me rephrase that though. If they have a different manager and a different mindset that's fully embracing the young players, I don't think it's bad to have
Goldie resigning. He's going to have opportunities elsewhere. That's the thing.
That's on him.
I don't think it makes sense for either side.
But that's the Cardinals' approach. The Cardinals' approach is if you want to be back, great, but you need to understand what this role is going to be. And if you're Goldschmidt, I don't do that if I believe I have something in the tank.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is I don't think it's bad for the Cardinals to have a Paul Goldschmidt as long as he's not playing over guys like Alec Burleson and all of these other players, and that's my concern.
Why are you spending that kind of money? Because we know what it's going to cost. It's going to be $12+ million to bring back Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me the opportunity cost of it, what could I otherwise use that $12 million for? I do think it's bad. I think it's a bad use of resources.
If it was a good run franchise, it would be. But this team spends $12 million on Lance Lynn or Steven Matz.
They needed that though. Like for Lance Lynn, for example, the Matz, like we've rehashed that enough. We don't have to get back into it. But if you have $15 million to spend this offseason, let's say they have $25 million to spend this offseason. I don't know what it actually is going to be, but there are things this team really does need. I'm not spending $15 million on a bench bat. I'm not spending $15 million on a guy that I'm potentially going to be platooning at first base. If you're spending that money, you're starting Paul Goldschmidt every single day. You have to. That's the only way to make that worth it. And so it's just a bad use of resources, in my opinion, to go out there and make that decision for that specific player. And I think that there's, again, to restate, I think there's a decent chance that next year Paul Goldschmidt comes back and is similar to what he's been in the second half, which is a .280 hitter with a .500 slugging percentage and is 25% above league average offensively. I think that might be what he is next year. And if you're a Cardinals fan and you see that and he goes elsewhere and has success elsewhere, you need to understand up front that was possible here. The alternative was going with the young guys. And to me, that is the smarter route for where this organization is at right now. It's enough with the Band-Aids, enough with we're going to see if it works this time. let's see if it works, but with the young guys. Finally, let's actually give them the opportunity that we've been talking about giving to the young guys, and this time it's going to happen in 2025. We'll see, but that's the only way you can sell me on this, like taking a step back financially. The way you do that is by playing the young guys, and that's the way you can sell it to your fan base. With Alex and Grant, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, week one was more about what you learned that went wrong for some college football teams than what went right for college football teams. We'll tell you about some of those and our biggest take in college football following week one of the regular season. We'll get into all of that in 15 minutes. Bet It or Forget It is next here on 101 ESPN.
Vegas sets them up, and we're here to make the call. It's BK and Ferrario's Bet It or Forget It on 101 ESPN.
Presented by Circus Sports Illinois. Sports betting the way it should be.
204-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on 101 ESPN. Alex, let's start out with this one. Bet it or forget it. One of these three teams that currently has some bad vibes in the NFL will end up missing the postseason. Cincinnati, Dallas, or San Francisco. At least one of those three will miss the playoffs this year due to bad vibes that have gone into the regular season.
So betting this one, and it's the Bengals. I've been saying for the last month that I do not feel good about where the Bengals are at right now. And I don't think the AFC is stacked, but like if I'm just going through it, I think the Ravens are clear-cut going to win the AFC North. And I think you're probably talking about 3 playoff teams from the East, 1 playoff team, maybe 2 from the West, 1 or 2 teams from the South. I don't know how much leeway there is if the Bengals don't figure out this bad juju right now. And, I mean, the biggest piece for this team's success is going to be Joe Burrow being dominant. And I don't know how dominant you could be if you don't have your best wide receiver out there. So I'm betting this.
Bengals are plus 215 right now to miss the playoffs over on the Circus.
I would totally take that. Hammer it right now.
Yeah, so basically 2-1 odds.
I think I would too. Just all of the drama surrounding the Bengals right now and the uncertainty and the fact that they play in the most competitive division in the NFL. Like, it's not a good combination right now. And I've been saying it. A lot of people don't agree, but I think the Steelers are going to be better. They're going to be right in the mix for the playoffs again. The Browns are going to be right there, and the Ravens are the favorite to win the division.
I think you're the only one that likes the Steelers this year.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not saying you're wrong because
loves the Steelers.
Typically, you end up being right. If you bet in favor of the Steelers, most of the time you end up being right.
And I think I'm going off a track record.
Sure.
And the fact that they, like, regardless of what you think of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, like, they're better than Mason Rudolph.
Ain't wrong there.
You would certainly think so. Their offensive line is a real question going into the season. They've got some injuries and stuff, but I think that worst case scenario, they've got a very good defense, and that might be enough for them. The Bengals are the team to me that I would point to that I'm like, man, I am starting to get a little worried. The Joe Burrow injury that no quarterback has ever dealt with before, the Jamar Chase stuff, we're like, dude, it's Tuesday of week 1.
Yeah. I regret drafting that dude my first round of the draft.
He's still not practicing. And last week, there was a period of time where the head coach came out and been like, hey, Jamar Chase is going to be ready to go. We got no worries about it. And then the next day, he was like, might have spoke out of turn there. We're taking this thing day by day. And then by yesterday, he was like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see with Jamar. We'll see where things go. Every day is new there. The Bengals are the team to me at plus 215 that I would be pointing to. I know the Cowboys have their issues, and I think that it's going to end in disaster. I do not think they'll have success in the postseason, and I do think that Dak Prescott will be starting somewhere else next year as their starting quarterback, and the Cowboys will pay $40 million in dead money next season by him going somewhere else. That's part of the deal for him. I think they're going to be too good to not make the postseason, and then the 49ers, man. They seem to have figured this thing out. They got everybody paid. Everybody's in camp now, so hopefully the good vibes start to come back. But the Bengals, I've got some serious questions about. That's the one that I would say potentially missing the playoffs as well.
Guys, bet it or forget it. At least one Blues defenseman will be an all-star this season.
I want to bet it.
All-star defenseman?
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to.
Remember, the all-star is, it's 3-on-3 still, so they only take a certain amount of players.
I'm forgetting it. It's too high of a bar to clear.
The only one for me that could get there if he has a really good season is Colton Parayko, but Colton Parayko sort of has the Jordan Bennington effect to him for some reason, in the sense that, like, his play is
the opposite. People think he's too nice.
Yeah, like he's got a good level of play, but nationally, he's not held to that regard. Like, he's not looked at as one of the top defensemen nationally. So, no, I'm not going to bet that.
Also, the Blues have other options. Like, there are some teams, Sharks, for example, right? You go into the season, you're like, I don't know, who's making it for us? The Blues haven't. Like, Robert Thomas is a real all-star caliber player. Jordan Kyrou could have that kind of a season. Pavel Buchnevich could absolutely have that kind of a season. Jordan Bennington could absolutely be worthy of making it to the all-star game this year. I'd be surprised if that's the case for any defenseman. I'm assuming you're going to say bet it based upon your reaction.
I think it goes back to the Justin Falk conversation. Do I believe it will happen? Boy, it's going to be really tough. The odds are not in the Blues' favor. But if your power play has success, that means the defenseman on that power play is going to be putting up points. And if you're going to go down the path of Justin Falk, he was the all-star this season that, I think it was the second year with the Blues, that he put up 50 points. So if your power play can have success and he's on it, I think he could be a part of that.
Grant, you got anything for us today?
Yeah, I'm going to go with college football, a team that I'm really low on. Number 9 team in the nation, Michigan.
Oh.
Really struggled against Fresno State.
Hey, did they get the W or not?
Barely.
Technically.
They got it handed to them, kind of. Bet it or forget it, after week 4, they're not a top 25 team in the nation.
Ooh,
They've got Texas coming up next at home.
A loss.
They've got Arkansas State at home. That's a win. And they've got USC at home, week 4.
USC.
I'm going to bet that they are out of the top 25 come week 5.
That's interesting.
I think they're a 2-loss team to USC and Texas.
It's hard to deny that. I mean, USC, we're going to get into this in the next segment. I didn't put a whole lot of stock. I thought LSU looked bad, but USC made them look bad.
Sure.
I do think Texas wipes the floor with Michigan. Texas looked good.
Michigan has a quarterback problem. Who could have seen this coming? And so I will, outside of the top 25, they're just coming from such a place of strength. Like, they're in the top 10 right now. What are they? 9? It'd be hard to fall all the way out of the top 25. 2 losses might even keep them there, but I'll bet it because why not? Yeah. So I'll bet it too. Outside of the top 25 after that USC loss, the thing is, like, they could easily get back in because after that it's Minnesota, Washington, Illinois, Michigan State. They do have Oregon, but we'll get to them as well. Indiana, Northwestern. They could still end up with like 3 or 4 losses on their schedule and be a borderline top 25 team despite those 2 early losses. Welcome to college football in 2024. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. Guys, bet it or forget it, Mo and Ollie will both be back in 2025. That one comes from a 314.
I'll bet it because I don't think Mo's gone, and if Mo's not gone, I don't think Ollie's going anywhere. I think those 2 are tied together.
I agree with that. In terms of like the 2 being tied together.
You think they're both gone?
I'm still going to lean that way. I'm waffling on that, but
yeah, this is another example of should versus will. Should they both be back? Absolutely not. Will they? Probably.
From the 314, guys, better to forget it. Mason Wynn will not get a long-term contract this offseason.
Oh, I would bet that one. I
don't think he'll get one this offseason either.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're going to have a change in leadership over the next couple of years, you still got to see multiple years of this. I mean, as great as this has been, and I mean, the dude is a star. There's no question about it. We have seen guys have one good year and then it fall off the second year. And then what does it look like? I think by that third year's off season, so after next season, that's when you could start discussing contract extensions.
But isn't it true that in baseball, the trend is to sign the players very early to long-term extensions? And I mean, what's worked in the past for the Cardinals, at least for now, has not been working. So I wonder if they try to go a different direction and really try to capitalize on their players young.
Yeah, but what's worked in the past for the Cardinals, what's not working now are the extensions that they gave out to a lot of players.
But old guys.
Yeah.
This is different. Most of the time, it's pretty rare that a young player extension really like blows up in your face. Now, sometimes they do, but it's the ones that are like 10 years, $200+ million. That's not what you'd be anticipating here for a guy like Mason Wynn. Like, it'd probably be like $100 million over the next 8 years, something like that. And that's not that bad. It's not going to be something that you look back. Even if Mason Wynn is simply just a very good defensive shortstop that ends up being below average offensively long term, that's worth it. Like, that is a contract that you could live with, and it's tradable. So I would give every opportunity. I would like to see them do something like this, but I don't think they will.
And I'll tell you what, too, like, with the restraints on payroll right now and the uncertainty with the TV contract and all that stuff, like, it would make a lot of sense to get someone signed at the cheapest possible, especially when they're going to be here for a long time.
And that, if there was one dude that I would look at and say, give him an extension, it's that guy, because he's shown me more about winning other than his play, just his attitude and the way that he goes about his business.
He and Brendan Donovan would be the 2 guys that I would look at this offseason and be like, yeah, we can sign them long term. I'm not giving Brendan Donovan crazy money, but I would reward him for the performance that we've seen.
Would you do Burleson?
No, not yet. That's like, I just don't feel like I need to.
Yeah, I get it.
And we've talked about this before. So many of these guys come in, have success, and then the second year is when you see them really kind of like, it comes back to earth a bit. We saw that with Newt. We saw it with Walker. We saw it with Gorman. We've seen it a million different times. Show me one more year from Burleson, and I'm ready to talk extension with him. Mason Wentz, it's the defensive value that makes me comfortable, along with the promise that is in the bat. With Alex and Grant, I'm BK. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, we'll get into the junk drawer. Katie Woo joins us coming up in the 1 o'clock hour as well. But coming up next, talking a little bit more about college football. Week 1 was more about what you hated than what you loved. Who did we learn the most about this week in college football? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Greg Francis here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Over the weekend, the Cardinals took 2 of 3 from the Yankees in the Bronx, but they followed that up yesterday with a loss in Milwaukee, 9-3. The final yesterday, the Brewers over the Cardinals, puts the Cardinals back at 500, 69-69 on the season. And they'll hope to get back above 500 today as they're back in Milwaukee to take on the Brewers for Game 2 of that series. Steven Matz will get the start for the Cardinals coming off the IL, going against Aaron Savali for the Brewers, and first pitch will be at 6:40. And then for the Blues today, they had some news come out this morning. Torey Krug will have surgery on that left ankle, and he will miss the entirety of the 2024-25 season. And in other NHL news, the Oilers extended Leon Draisaitl. His new contract will be 8 years long, $14 million per year. I'm Grant Francis. The Sports Center update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex and Grant on BK, week 1 in college football was more, and it always is for the most part this way, Alex, more about what you learned that you hated about your team than it was what you loved about your team. Especially when you're somebody like Missouri, for example, right? You're a Missouri fan, you leave that game, and the number one thing I would imagine that was a talking point for a lot of fans on Friday, because nobody can be happy about a 51-0 win, is, Brady Cook missed on his deep ball.
Yeah,
is that going to be the
T-bone
thing that becomes problematic for them this season? I'm not super worried about it. He showed for an entire season last year that the deep ball is not going to be necessarily a problem for him when healthy. So that is not something that concerned me as much as it did for many. But those are the kinds of things that you're worried about learning about your team in week 1. Alex, for you, when you look at it through that area, that lens, who was the team? What was the thing that you left week 1 saying, that's going to be a problem for Team X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, I think the main one for me there's 2 that really stuck out to me. One was LSU losing to USC, but it's ranked first ranked, so I can get that one. LSU didn't look like a powerhouse in the SEC like it seemed a lot of people were ranking them as. But the biggest one I walked away and I'm saying, is the guy that I said I believed was one of the best head coaches in college football, Dan Lanning with Oregon. If you look at the stat line for Oregon, you win 24-14. Dylan Gabriel throws 380 yards with 2 touchdowns. The rushing game gave you 95 yards and a touchdown. I understand it probably became the second team in the second half, and that's why there were only 10 points scored. But you took on Idaho.
No, it was the opposite.
Was the first team the whole game?
I mean, they barely escaped with a win there. They were up 14-0 at half. They were up 14-7 going into the fourth quarter, man.
Yeah.
They played their starters the entire game.
You played Idaho, and you scored 24 points and barely won off of a team that I think a lot of people were saying were going to lock up one of the conference championship spots. I walked away from that one thinking, okay, this was supposed to be elite. We were talking about an offense that was going to carry over from last year. Yes, I know it changed a little bit in terms of personnel, but I walked away from that one thinking, I don't know if Oregon is as big of a juggernaut as we once thought they were. Offensively, they look like they still got some kinks to figure out before they start to get into conference play.
For me, the biggest takeaway that I had, and I'm an Alabama fan, and it's weird to say this, seeing them win 63-0. I think that team's a 3-loss team.
Wow.
I am not high on Alabama. Their first 21 points were a joke in that game. Western Kentucky is awful. Their quarterback was throwing interception after interception in the first quarter, and even then they were still driving down the field before they would turn the ball over and hand Alabama points. Their first 14 points were off turnovers, and then their third touchdown, which is an 80-yard deep ball that Western Kentucky decided they didn't want to cover this receiver. So Alabama was gifted that first quarter, and then from there it was just on autopilot, and Western Kentucky didn't act like they wanted to be there. From what I saw in that first quarter when it was actually still a game, Western Kentucky was at least driving the ball before they would make a stupid decision and turn the ball over. Alabama did not look good. Even though they were scoring points, they did not look good.
The quarterback threw for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, but he only threw 9 passes.
No, that's what I'm saying. That stat line doesn't make sense to me.
No, it's because Western Kentucky was so bad, 80 of those yards came on one pass. that game, Alabama did not win that game more than Western Kentucky just lost.
Yeah, they were Western Kentucky.
Yeah, but like even through the process, Alabama didn't look great. Like Jalen Milroe fumbled twice in the first quarter.
Just happy to be here.
Like, it just didn't look good. And I look at Alabama's schedule. Like, they've got that 3-game stretch where they're on the road against Tennessee. Then they've got Mizzou on the road at LSU, which I know LSU, like we just talked about, they didn't look great. But at LSU is always a tough game for Alabama. They've got Auburn, which is always a tough game for Alabama, even when that team's not very good. Just look at last year. Like, they've got Oklahoma on the road. They've got a tough schedule.
Yep.
And I think they win probably half of those games.
It's not going to be easy for him. I don't have it in me to get overly. I also didn't watch this game super closely because it wasn't one that I was like, got to make sure that as I'm on vacation, I check out the Alabama versus Western Kentucky game. So it's 63-0. They got their starters out. Like that's a win
for the Hilltoppers.
We'll figure it out from there. Hopefully things start getting better as we go along. For if you're an Alabama fan, the team to me that I looked at and I was like, all right, you were supposed to be better than this. Like the coaching staff, they turned things over here. It was supposed to look good. You've got this young quarterback that people are really excited about. Texas A&M, come on, man. You're at home. You score 13 points against Notre Dame. 13? That's all you can muster up? Your quarterback goes 12 for 30 for 100 yards and 2 interceptions. The guy that everybody's been hyping up all offseason as to why this year will be different for Texas A&M. Every year, Alex, I say, I will go ahead and sell you all of the Texas A&M stock going into the season for what people think they're going to be. And then by the end of the year, I think I'm going to be more right than what the market suggests that they are. Dude, this Texas A&M team is the same as it's been every single year. They might be okay. They'll probably end up winning like 8 games by the end of the season. They'll beat somebody they're not supposed to. They'll be good defensively. Like all of those things I still believe to be true. But a real contender in any meaningful way? Hell no, man. You can't lose that game and consider yourself to be that. They'll beat McNeese. They'll beat Florida. They'll beat Bowling Green. They'll probably beat Arkansas, although they had just a crazy weekend offensively as well. But then you get into like the meat of their schedule: Missouri, LSU, Auburn, Texas. Could they lose 3 of those 4? Yeah, I think they probably could. So Texas A&M to me was the team that I feel like I learned the most about going into the weekend because of what people thought they were going to be versus what the reality showed them to be on Saturday.
The other one too, Clemson sucks. And I'm done with this like hype of Clemson being better than what people are giving them credit for. Dabo Swinney is going to be gone. That Clemson team might be lucky to pick up 7 wins this season. They don't have a quarterback.
Agreed. I don't know that they have a quarterback. I also think Georgia is just going to be a tough team for people to learn these things.
Absolutely. I mean, I get it, but like
they are a boa constrictor, man.
Yeah.
You get into the game, you think you have a plan, and then you get like 3 drives in. You're like, dude, we have nothing we can do against them offensively, and they just suck the life out of you. Yeah. They're the Dementors of college football, and every week it is a joyless way to watch football because they're not super explosive. They're not a super fun offense to watch. But defensively, they are just, every year it's the same thing. And then the guys go to the NFL and they're like average to bad for the most part defensively. All the players that you see on that team, they all go in the first round, and then like very few of them go on to become great NFL players. But at the college level, they're pretty damn good. What was your biggest take, big picture wise, on college football this year? Did you have one? Because I've got one that I'll throw out there, and it's related to what you just said, Alex.
I mean, my biggest take was I don't know if the SEC is as scary as people are making it out to be. And I get it, it's 1 week, but I wasn't impressed by LSU. I wasn't really impressed. I was kind of in the same line of thinking as Grant. I wasn't really impressed with Alabama. Florida wasn't very impressive to me. Tennessee, I still think, is going to be a juggernaut. You've got Texas. You've got Georgia. I'm not as afraid of the top-heavy SEC as people made it out to be.
Yeah, I mean, 6 of the top 10 teams in the country and 4 of the top 5 are currently in the SEC, so that seems pretty good to me.
Fine, but I still think Mizzou's better than a majority of those teams.
That's fair. They were one of the 6. They're in the top 10 right now. Mine is the ACC. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Dude, the ACC is going to be real bad this season. You mentioned Clemson, Alex. They did not look good against Georgia at all. Their only hope is Miami. Because other than Miami, everybody else from the conference has looked awful so far to start out this season, man. The only times that they've looked good is when they're going up against Florida State, and that's because Florida State, we came into the season thinking that they were going to be one thing, and now we realize, oh, they just stink. So Georgia Tech, the team that beat up on them in week 1, we're like, oh, maybe Georgia Tech's going to be better. No. I think Florida State's just bad. The ACC this season has a chance to be like definitively, clearly, no doubt about it, the worst of the Power 4 conferences. And there might be a G5 conference out there that has a better end of season result than whatever the ACC is going to be this season. Thank God for Miami for that conference, because everybody else is awful.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the ACC right now, and like, woof. We're talking about Georgia Tech and Boston, Boston being the top heavy teams right now. I don't see a dominant team other than Miami, like you mentioned, for what they did. But even Miami, I'm kind of still wondering.
I do like their quarterback. Ward's really good.
I don't see a dominant team in the ACC.
Agreed. I'm not sure I see another like really good team.
Yeah.
Like top 15-ish team. It's probably just Miami, and then everybody else is like 17 and beyond by the end of the season.
Disband the ACC.
Great. Did you have a bigger picture college football take coming out of the weekend?
I think one thing that stood out to me, I think that there's going to be just a lot of parity this year. I think the playoff there could be some surprise teams making it, and not only making it, but potentially winning a few games. Like, you look at some of the teams that traditionally are powerhouses, like Alabama, Michigan, that could take a step back. And then, like, even the best of the best team that we're talking about, like Georgia, they don't seem like an overly super powerhouse to me like we've seen in past years. Like, they seem like the best that's out there right now,
sure,
but they don't seem like they're as good as Georgia was, 2-3 years ago. So I think that my biggest takeaway is right now it feels like everybody is beatable. And I think come playoff time, there could be some huge upsets, and I'm all here for it.
We brought up Oregon. We brought up Michigan in this segment, 2 teams that were disappointing. LSU certainly disappointing as well. A lot of the theme for those teams is trying to replace what was a superstar quarterback, right? And it was really hard in week 1. We'll see if that changes as things go along. One team that I will bring up that was a positive was on the other side of that LSU game.
Illinois.
No. USC. I really liked what we saw out of their young quarterback, Miller Moss. I didn't think he had a great start of the game. And then at the end, fourth quarter, when they needed to make some plays and they kind of pulled back the reins and they said, hey, Miller, go make a play, he was able to do exactly that. They had some receivers that made plays for them as well. Miller Moss is a guy worth potentially getting excited about this year. I will, however, tamp down the hype just a bit. I do wonder how much of that was LSU's defense. Yeah. And it's hard to say in week 1, having only seen him against one other team, but that's something to keep in mind is like, hey, sometimes these exciting moments happen and you're like, oh, damn, that was it. Georgia Tech week 1, right? Week 0. Holy bleep. Maybe they're going to be really good offensively, and this offensive line is going to be able to take them to the promised land. And then you see, okay, Florida State's just bad. How much of that was USC's offense, their quarterback guy getting his first opportunity, versus LSU's defense still not being what they were expecting? We'll see. Coming up next, time for the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and Gray, and I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, we'll do a quick junk drawer here. So over the weekend, I went out to Kansas City. I had a good weekend there. I get home on Sunday, and I turn on some sports, as you could probably imagine, right? We've got DirecTV, and I've decided this is the end. This is the end for me and cable.
Nice.
ESPN, I flip it on, and then it goes black. I'm like, what the hell
What'd you do, man?
Why is this taking place right now? I need some explanations. What's going on? And then I see the report that comes out. ESPN and DirecTV are having some kind of a contract dispute.
Of course they are.
I wasn't made aware of this prior to. I don't think many of you were made aware of this prior to. But the week of college football kicking off in full force, the week that the NFL is getting ready to get going, the week that sports are really back in our lives in a meaningful way for this fall football season. And DirecTV's like, no, sir, you will not be watching ESPN any longer. Alex, I'm sick of it. I can't do it anymore. I have had it up to here. I'm done. I'm done with cable. I'm cutting the cord. I'm out. They lost me this weekend. This is the end.
That's what lost it for you, huh?
This was
the first
it.
sports weekend, and BK's like, nope, you screwed me over too many times.
Dude, I'm out.
I cut it a year ago. 2 years ago, I think, because this was in the midst of the Bally Sports stuff, and it just got so infuriating because why am I paying this money? I'm paying this money to watch my local sports teams, and because of their ongoing dispute, I can't watch them. So why am I spending the amount of money when I could pay all of these apps and watch what we watch?
I had no Fox for like a year. And I was like, you know what? I'll live with it. I'll get the bunny ears, right? I got the digital antenna or whatever. I'll figure that out. This is different. You take ESPN away from me.
You do this?
I work for the bleeping company, man. Come on.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. We're like, hey, I work for you. Can you help me out? Doesn't work that way. I've never felt happier, though.
Straw. I'm out.
Yep. I've never been happier cutting that cord because that bill coming every single month, and you look at it and you're like, what am I paying for? Because I can't watch half of the crap I want to watch. I'm on all of these apps.
Oh, dude, I'm ready for that bill to be over. Yep. I'm ready for me to no longer have to think about it anymore.
It's a good feeling, man.
I just wanted to pass that along to everybody. If you this weekend had the same thought, you are not alone. I'm right there with you, ladies and gentlemen. With Alex and Ryan,
have fun
I'm BK.
paying 15 apps.
Katie Woo, Cardinals Insider, joins us next here on 101 ESPN. kind of. In our lives, it is at least. We were off yesterday, but since we pushed it a day back with the holiday, we do have Katie Woo joining us here on BK and Ferrario. She joins us via the 101 ESPN hotline. She is the Cardinals insider for The Athletic, where she wrote over the weekend about Jordan Walker back with the Cardinals, how he's going to play every day. Katie, we appreciate the time as always. How are you enjoying your time up in Milwaukee today?
It's a beautiful day in Milwaukee, fellas. I'm actually a Milwaukee enthusiast. It is, in my opinion, a big sleeper city in the National League. I love coming here. Just if you haven't been to Milwaukee and you're a baseball fan, it's worth it just for the stadium alone. But the atmosphere, 10 out of 10. Milwaukee never misses.
Milwaukee or New York? Which trip did you prefer on this this 6-day stretch here, Katie?
Well, they both have their
he got you there.
Their draws.
Yeah, you're on a boat in Milwaukee, and in New York, you can do, literally anything.
He got you there, Katie.
All things considered, it's not so bad.
Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's fine, and, maybe that will eventually transfer over to Cardinals land. We'll see.
How much cheese do you eat up in Milwaukee, Katie?
An absurd amount. Nice. I actually don't want to say it publicly.
Nice.
My Milwaukee habits are not reflective of the person that I am.
Nice.
Or are, and that there's no judgment there, Katie. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Cardinals. They have actually played some decent baseball, all things considered. I think they're 9-8 so far in this stretch of games that we've talked about for months now against contenders. Brewers, Yankees, Padres, and Twins over this stretch, and then you had that series against the Dodgers. Katie, what have we learned about this team since mid-August when they started going up against a bunch of really quality opponents on their schedule?
Yeah, I think we need to give credit to the Cardinals first. We talked about it in the beginning or in the middle of August when they had those 22 games of really strong opponents, and they've held their own. We've said they need to go on a run, but more importantly, they need to win series, and they found ways to do that. And it's been overall, I think, an encouraging sign because so many things had gone wrong for them, right? You're looking at Contreras being out for, at least 3 to 4 weeks. You're looking at the roster kind of being in shambles and a lot of jerking, some guys up, some guys down. But then they keep finding ways to win. So what you're seeing is a much better all-around offensive performance. Maybe that's because guys are getting consistent playing time, and all of a sudden Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado look a lot better. And you're seeing an offense that has figured out ways to score with runners in scoring position, which is something they have struggled to do all year. So much better overall quality of play for the Cardinals. Obviously, they're still somewhat in it, even if their playoff odds are very slim. But never say never. If there's one team that knows how to do an insane September run, it is the St. Louis Cardinals. So we will see. But overall, I think if you're a Cardinals fan and you have not given up on the season yet, this is an encouraging last 2.5 weeks.
Katie, I'll tell you the one thing that has been really encouraging for me is just seeing the emergence on top of the emergence of Mason Wynn this season. I mean, when it feels like the team was down and out, Mason Wynn just still finds ways to impact this ball club. It does feel we are officially seeing the emergence of a star in Major League Baseball.
Mason Wynn has had a heck of a season, and his impact on this Cardinals club right now, I think, is one of the most, if not the most exciting things about what's going on in St. Louis. He has all the makings of a star as soon as he really comes into his own. I mean, you think he's just 22, he's playing his first full season in the majors, but he can do it all. He has the skill set, obviously. He has the understanding of the game. He has the knowledge of the game. Now it's just understanding that he can play here, and I think he has enough swagger and enough confidence and enough belief in himself for that to be a pretty easy transition. But I think all across the board, what we've seen from Mason Wynn should get people very excited in St. Louis because he's someone that you, in a couple years, when you think about the Cardinals, you should also be thinking of Mason Wynn.
Do you think he's somebody they consider getting extension talks with this offseason, Katie, or is it too premature for that right now?
That's difficult, but not because of what Mason's done or the history of this front office. We just know that John Mozeliak has said after 2025 he's planning to step down. So it's a little bit maybe uncharacteristic for an organization to offer an extension or think about an extension, knowing that there is going to be some significant change after the 2025 season. So that would be, I think, the rationale as to why they wouldn't do it. You see teams like the Brewers, for example, what they did with Jackson Chourio and just signed him throughout all of his team-controlled years. I don't imagine the Cardinals would let Mason Wynn go at any point during those team-controlled years, so it could be the argument for why he should see an extension, but I don't think, just given the nature of this front office and how they operate and the impending changes coming in the next 2 years that we'll see it at this time.
All right, Katie, we spent a lot of last year around this time talking about Jordan Walker, and we're talking about him once again for very different reasons. You had the story over on The Athletic. We're talking to Katie Wu, Cardinals insider for The Athletic here on BK and Ferrario, about what the plan is now, which is very different than the plan 3 weeks ago with Jordan Walker now that he's back. Can you explain to us and to the audience kind of how we arrived at this place, what the plan is with Jordan Walker? Give us the latest. It feels like it's changed every couple of weeks. So where are we at now?
It has changed every couple of weeks. It's been very interesting to chronicle. I think what the Cardinals are doing with Jordan Walker now is that they've had a lot of different changes over the last 3 weeks that have allowed an opportunity for him to play every day on the active roster. Before, when they brought him up for that 7-game stretch against the Reds and Dodgers, they were very clear that they thought he was their best available option. Now, two things, you can read into two things here. One, the Cardinals were down so bad in the middle of August that they were desperate to win 3 games at the cost of anything. And in the grand scheme of things, Jordan Walker playing 3 games at the major league level will not hinder his long-term development. To me, I wasn't really that upset about the week of games Walker missed in the minors. I thought it was just more indicative of, A, this team is desperate to win right now. That's a product of their own doing, and they are so desperate that they are willing to publicly send that message by using Jordan Walker for 3 games. B, it also speaks to the state of the 40-man. If Jordan Walker is your best option at that time, someone who actually didn't hit lefties well at all and probably shouldn't have been used as a platoon just based on his numbers, what does that say about your active roster? That was the bigger issue for me. Now, some things changed, right, since that whole debacle happened. The biggest one was that Nolan Gorman was also optioned to the minors, which allowed Brendan Donovan to take over as the everyday second baseman. And, Donnie, he does everything, and he does everything well. It opened up a spot in the outfield that wasn't fully clear because Tommy Pham was here. I thought the Cardinals did the right thing to do right by the player and let Tommy go so he can play somewhere where he wanted to play every day, right? The Cardinals weren't going to give him that opportunity. So with Gorman gone and Pham gone, there's a clear spot for an everyday outfielder. That's Jordan Walker. They said it. I thought Ollie was it was a pretty telling comment that how Jordan plays in these next 30 games at the major league level will help them better understand where the team is in 2025. There's adjustments that you need to make in real time. You do those in the minor leagues. But ultimately, if you're not making those adjustments at the major league level, they really can't evaluate a player in the ways that they should. So that's how they came to it. Doesn't make a lot of sense. I get it. But when you start breaking it down piece by piece, it does become a little bit more clear on the bizarre path they've taken with Jordan.
So, Katie, we talked about it ad nauseum in terms of how it took them this long to get to this point, which remains to be seen. But now that my frustration kind of transfers over to the Victor Scott, I understand Michael Ciani is back, and I understand Michael Ciani has been a Gold Glove-esque center fielder, but we're now taking Victor Scott out of the starting lineup, and he becomes a bench bat because we need to see more of Michael Ciani. It's very confusing.
Well, so active rosters on September are different than active rosters from April through August, right? In September, you're expanding rosters so that you can use everyone's specific skill set to win ball games. I think what some fans are, and I'm not saying right or wrong, the organization believes that this team is still contending, and the players believe as well. Many fans believe this team should be looking for 2025. So they're not aligned, and that's okay. There's arguments for either side, and maybe that's some frustration on maybe why Victor isn't starting every day. I will say, Victor Scott, very talented outfielder. The speed is insane. We know about him. When you look down the metrics, though, there are ways for him to improve. He is not as good as Michael Ciani in terms of first step, route effectiveness, route efficiency, but he has the speed to make up for it. By working with Victor Scott but keeping him at the major league level and doing all this pregame work that they're doing to ensure that he gets better in that regard, I still think you're setting him up for success later. It's just right now, Michael Ciani is your best all-around center fielder. The Cardinals still believe they're in it. They still believe they're contending, so they're going to play their best possible 28. Right now, with Victor's skill set, his best asset is his speed. So they'll use him as a pinch runner. It's what they believe, or later named defensive replacement. It's what they believe will give them and maximize their best chances of winning ball games. The confusion stems from much of the fan base believing this team should focus on 2025.
All right, Katie, final question for you, and it's a big one, and it's what they're going to be faced with over the next week or so. And I know if you asked this exact question to Ollie Marmol, he would tell you these things work themselves out, or he'd say something about, hey, we're not there yet. And that's fine. That's probably how they honestly feel. But
both equally frustrating.
Cardinals have a rotation crunch. Tell me if you've heard about this before. But this time it's actually in a good way. They've got too many guys for too few spots in their rotation. I guess technically a good thing, even though many of them are not performing particularly well. Katie, as of today, what is your anticipation as to what the Cardinals will do with the rotation when Lance Lynn returns and now that Steven Matz is a part of it?
Well, let's break down. This is fascinating because I have no idea really what the Cardinals are going to do. But we know Sonny Gray is staying in that rotation, as is Eric Fetty, as is Kyle Gibson. Lance Lynn is coming back. When he comes back, he's probably going in there. I don't see the Cardinals taking out Miles Michaelis, performance aside.
So you just named 5 players.
Exactly.
Where's
and
the
one
6th?
I did not name, and one that I do not agree with, if this happens, would be moving Palante out of the rotation.
How can
Now,
you
I don't
justify?
know if
How
they're
can they
going to do
justify that, Katie?
Let's preface this. I don't know if they're going
Sure.
to do that. Past history suggests that they will, and we'll get to that. I'm sure we will, if that does happen. But if you're looking on the past trends of this organization, it would seem to indicate that Palante would be the odd man out. Now, as we know, performance-wise, he's been the best starter in the second half. He's really turned into, I think, a dependable outing. Yeah, he had that clunker yesterday, but he was due for one. And that says a lot about Palante and how well he's pitched in the last 2 months. But when you're looking at the 5 veterans, all 5 are under contract or have a team contract for 2025, right? They are in some way going to play into the future of next year. So is Palante, theoretically, because you need to see what he can do at the major league level. So there is no clear-cut answer for what they should do. But if you're going based on what they've done before, then the writing might be on the wall. But again, guys, I don't know. Like Ollie will say when we've been asking for the last 4 days, these things work themselves out.
Yeah.
I truly do not know what their call is going to be. I do not know how they would justify Palante at this point, but hey, we'll see if we get there.
Katie, appreciate the time as always.
Sorry,
you enjoy
BK got
yourself
mad
out
at
there in
you.
Milwaukee. I promise it's not you. You know how this is.
I get
organization
it. I
just
would tend to
drives us
agree.
crazy.
And if we get to that point, I'm sure we can have like a therapy session. We might both need it.
Oh, well, there will be screaming involved in that therapy session.
No. This time next Monday, I'm looking forward to it. We'll certainly have our conversation. Katie, appreciate the time as
Amazing.
always. Enjoy yourself in Milwaukee. We'll talk with you again soon.
You got it, guys. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. That's Katie Wu joining us as she does each and every week here on BK and Ferrario. I do want to spend a little bit more time on that.
I didn't want to yell at her, but I do want to yell if that's okay.
Let's all take a deep breath together. You ready? 1, 2, 3.
Ooh-sa.
All right. So here's why I'm frustrated.
Uh-oh.
We can talk about it together here on the other side. The Cardinals are doing one of 2 things, and it appears that they're clearly doing the first thing. One, they're playing for the here and now, and so they want their best guys to get the most opportunities possible, Alex. I could listen to that argument. If that's how you want to play it, you're at 69 and 69 right now. Very nice.
Very nice. Double nice.
Maybe you feel like, hey, 5.5 games back, we've got a pretty soft end to the season in terms of our schedule. We really don't want to have back-to-back under 500 seasons for the first time in 70 years as an organization. We're going to play for the here and now. Okay, I disagree with it, but you can justify that. There's ways to justify that. Or option 2, we want our young guys to get the most opportunities possible because we've really got to set ourselves up for success in 2025, right? I could also listen to that. That's personally where I prefer, but either one of those is a real plan. Alex, my frustration and why I am having a hard time justifying not keeping Andre Palante in that rotation right now is because he fits into both buckets. He is one of your best starters and is a young player that you're building around for 2025. And so there is no true justification for pulling him from the rotation in favor of Michaelis, Lynn, any of these other dudes that are older veterans. So I would love to get your thoughts on that. I would love to get the audience's thought on that. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll hear from Alex on the Cardinals' plans with the rotation and hear from you guys coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alex and Grant on BK. So the Cardinals have a decision coming up on what they're going to do with their rotation, Alex. Currently, they have 6 guys. They're going with a 6-man rotation through the next turn. And then they are likely to add Lance Lynn to the roster at some point between now and, mid-September, right? He's got, it sounds like maybe one more rehab start. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Lance Lynn, but he's on his way back to the big league roster in some capacity in the foreseeable future. And so really they've got to make this decision some point in the next week or so. Andre Pallante had a clunker yesterday. He wasn't very good. And it was the first really, truly bad start for him in a while. And Alex, when I say it was a bad start, I mean like 5 innings and 5 earned runs.
Oh, it sounds like a Miles Michaelis start.
Like not that bad compared to some of the other starts that we've seen from guys in this rotation this season. And overall, as a starter, it's hard to make an argument that anybody other than Andre Pallante has been the best starter in the rotation since Pallante has been reinserted into the rotation. And so just if you're going based upon the results, if you're going based upon what he has accomplished as a starting pitcher thus far, it's a no-brainer. When Katie was going through who's going to stay in the rotation no matter what, she said Sonny Gray's in there, Kyle Gibson's in there. Those are 2 guys. Eric Fetty's in there. Those 3 are immediately like no doubt about it. Yeah. In my mind, Andre Pallante should be in that bucket of players. He's one of your best. He's also a young guy that you're building around for the long term. Like everything about him being in the rotation is the correct decision. So Alex, when you look at the potential of what they're going to do with their rotation, how are you viewing this? Do you see it differently than what I do?
No. Pallante is in the rotation. And I want to read you a tweet that I saw, what was that, on the 1st, so what was that, Sunday? From Derek Gould. This is his tweet. Andre Pallante will start Monday in Milwaukee. There are members of the Cardinals leadership that believe he's earned the chance to finish the season in rotation and see if he's part of the plan for 2025. Are you kidding me? There are members of the front office that believe he's earned a chance to finish the season in the rotation.
He then got a tweet back for what it's worth, Alex, just to add the context. That somebody asked him, does that mean that there are members of the Cardinals leadership that don't want to see him as a part of the rotation? And he said, it means that I haven't heard back from all of them and didn't want to misrepresent my reporting. So
didn't hear back from all of them.
It appears that what he's saying is the people that I have heard from within the Cardinals organization want Pallante to be a part of the rotation. So I'm just going to add that as important context because I read it the same way you did at first, where I was like, all right, let's blowtorch everybody within the organization. Like,
that's it. It's over.
Insane. But I wanted to add that additional context.
Fine. You can put that context in there all you want, but out of one side of their mouth, they're telling you that they still believe that they can win and get into the playoffs with the roster that they have in place. But then out of the other side of their mouth, they still want Lance Lynn and Steven Matz back into the rotation and pulling out the guy that has been, from the manager's mouth, their best pitcher since the All-Star break. I don't understand the premise of Steven Matz deserves another shot at the rotation after his injury stint, and this team still believing they can compete. I don't believe Lance Lynn being out for as long as he has been and what he looked like prior to his injury deserves to be back into the rotation over a Andre Pallante. Now, if we're talking about Kyle Gibson or if we're talking about Miles Michaelis, I'll listen because, hey, it hasn't been pretty for both of those guys in the second half. There's been decline, and maybe guys that haven't been pitching here for a while deserve a shot to go back in there. But in no way, shape, or form can I listen to a Cardinals team tell me that they believe they have a shot to make the playoffs, but in the same breath say, well, we're going to take Andre Pallante out of our rotation because these guys give us the better chance. I mean, all of it is a load of baloney.
I'm totally with you. Steven Matz shouldn't even be in this conversation. To me, he should be coming into camp next year as a bullpen arm. Just let it happen. We all know that's probably the right move for him. I think he could actually be good in that capacity. Like, if you put him into the bullpen, I think he might be a good reliever in Major League Baseball as long as he's willing to accept the role. And honestly, like, he, at this point for his own career, it's probably for the best for everybody involved. So that's one that you can just kind of set off to the side. And then it becomes like Michaelis, Lynn, and Pallante, right? Like those 3 guys for 2 spots essentially in the rotation. Michaelis is going to be back next season most likely. It's $18 million. It's going to be hard to be able to move off of that contract. I don't know if Lance Lynn's going to be back or not, Alex, but my assumption at this point would probably be no, because this team's going to have to shed some payroll. And Lance Lynn's got like a $12 million club option going into next season. So in that regard, it doesn't really make a ton of sense. And then this is the thing that I just really cannot overlook. And it's the part of this conversation that I think needs probably a little bit more attention. We all agree Andre Palante is probably going to be a part of your rotation next year, right, Alex?
Yeah, he better be.
That's the expectation.
Yeah.
He's at 114 innings this season. Just pretty good. He was at like 108 2 years ago when he was a part of the Cardinals rotation as well. If he's going to be a permanent fixture in this rotation, you want him to get to 150 plus next year. That should be the goal going in. Most teams use like a 20% rule in terms of innings going up from where they were the previous season. Well, a 20% innings increase from where he's at right now put you at like 135 innings for next season. You want him to get 150 plus? Well, then you need him to keep starting.
Yep.
You don't want to get into a situation next year where because Palante stayed healthy, you have to start pulling back the reins on, oh, actually, we can't have Andre Palante in the rotation for this next stretch. He needs to have a start skipped because he's getting up on his innings limit. Or if they make the playoffs next season, we're running up against it with Palante. We're going to have to put him into the bullpen now. Avoid all of that and just keep him in the rotation. You'll get him 3 or 4 more starts the rest of the way. If he goes 5 innings on average, boom, now you're up to like 130 by the end of the season. Now that 20% rule, you're right up at or above 150 innings by the end of the season. So I don't see a single explanation that makes sense or holds water that would pull Andre Palante from the rotation. There is none. So I don't want to get pre-mad. This is an Alex thing.
I'll get pre-mad.
The fact that there's even an open-ended question here leads you to wonder, like, what are they going to do here? Are they really going to go with the veterans again? Are they going to lean towards their veterans despite the fact that everything suggests they shouldn't? And that's my fear right now, Alex. That's what my concern is if they do that, how could any Cardinals fan have confidence that this offseason, for example, they're not going to bring back Goldie, or next year they're going to go into the year and build around the kids?
Yeah.
I just don't believe it.
Again, it feels like it's just this false sense of hope that the Cardinals can be in the playoffs still. And I get it. There still is mathematically a chance for you to get in. But I don't understand the premise of that that low percentage chance of you getting into the postseason equals taking the guy that has been the guy that's kept you at least kept you mathematically alive, taking him out and putting 2 guys in that were not good for you in their final few starts before they were injured, and throwing them into the rotation and pulling the guy out that has been successful for you from the All-Star break up until now. What does that say to the team around you? What does it say to the team that's been trying to fight to stay alive that you're pulling their best guy out of the rotation? And I get it. Maybe we've all been living on hopium of Andre Palante, and what we saw was the best. That was the Cardinals' devil magic, and he's going to fall back down to earth. I'd rather find that out going into the offseason than sit there and have this false sense of, hey, Andre Palante was really good for us. Maybe he's a part of a rotation, but now let's go back to the Steven Matz toy, because I know what's going to happen. Matz is going to pitch well for a couple of starts, and this team is going to convince themselves that Matz is the starting pitcher for next year.
Last thing on this, somebody from the text line, 618, said, guys, what makes you think that you know what's better than the Cardinals themselves? They have all of the info that you might not have. There's a lot of truth in that. I do tend to defer to the Cardinals. They have all of the information, and what is publicly available is limited, right? That being said, there are times where the Cardinals have made decisions lately or over the past couple of seasons that I think are fair to criticize. And it's with full information and partial information, everything leads you to the same results. And that is to say this was wrong, just a publicly wrong. This decision, if they make it, will be one of those where there is almost no real way to say this is correct.
Yep.
It would be very hard to do. You could even make an argument to me, Alex, going with a 6-man rotation that includes most of the guys that we just mentioned. I could listen to that argument. And then you just say, hey, for the rest of the year, we're going with a 6-man, and we've got Steven Matz is going to the bullpen right now, and he's going to be a multi-inning reliever for us. We've got Libby, who can be a multi-inning reliever for us. King can give some length for you as well. I'd listen to it. Don't love it, but I'm fine with that. Now that you have the expanded rosters, there's no scenario where 5 guys make it into that rotation, and one of them is not Andre Palante for me, though.
I agree with that.
Be a part of it.
He's got to.
All right, he's Alex Ferrario. That is Grant Francis, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll hit the BK and Ferrario Rewind. But coming up next, we're going to tell you some of our picks for this NFL season. I want to get some futures thoughts from Alex and Grant. We'll talk a little NFL next here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. It was a good weekend for the Cardinals out in the Bronx as they took 2 of 3 from the Yankees, but yesterday they lost 9-3 in the series opener in Milwaukee. They're now back at 500, 69-69 on the season. They'll hope to get back above 500 today in Game 2 of the series with the Brewers. Steven Matz will get that start coming off the IL for the Cardinals, going up against Aaron Savali for the Brewers. First pitch will be at 6:40. Some NHL news today for the Blues. Torey Krug, it's been announced that he will have surgery on his left ankle that will sideline him for the entirety of the 2024-25 season. Then elsewhere, the Oilers extended Leon Draisaitl. He will be making $14 million per year for the next 8 years. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Hey, this NFL season, we want you to get signed up to play in the Fast Lane's Pick'em Challenge. It's available right now at 101ESPN.com. The Fast Lane versus the Riz Show. It's off once again. They are doing this over at 101ESPN.com. I'm going to be a part of it this season because they needed somebody to lose every single week. So I'm going to be able to take that on this season. If you guys would like to go against myself, the Fast Lane, or the Riz Show, be sure to sign up right now at 101ESPN.com.
You're going to suffer double punishment this football season between BK and Ferrario and the Fast Lane.
I'm a glutton for punishment. What can I say?
Man, and at least theirs doesn't as harsh as ours is.
Let's get into some NFL quick hitters. Alex, let's start out here. Grant, I'm curious your thoughts on this as well. Who's going to finish this season as the league's highest scoring offense? Some of the favorites based upon the Circa Sportsbook right now. The Lions, they are the current betting favorite at 11.5 to 1. And then the Bills, Texans, Dolphins in this order. Eagles / Rams both at 17 to 1. Chiefs, Bears, and Bengals are at 18 to 1. And then the 49ers, and then there's some long shots in there as well. Packers at 30 to 1, for example. The Falcons at 37 to 1. Alex, who do you think finishes this season as the highest scoring team in the NFL?
I mean, this one's easy for me. I would put the money on the Texans right now. I think you're going to have, despite a lot of doubt on Stephon Diggs, I think you're going to have a Stephon Diggs prove-it year to where everybody's talking about him being a problem and he goes out, performs well. They've got 3 legit wide receivers on top of a running game, on top of a decent tight end with C.J. Stroud. I would put the money on Texans 14 to 1. But if you were going a long shot and you believe, like BK believes in his guy Jordan Love, Packers aren't that scary of a betting on that one. You've got Josh Jacobs, if he can at least be a shade of what he's been the last couple of years. And if you get these wide receiver weapons, like that'd be one that I could put some money down and see 30 to 1 odds looking good.
The first one that came to mind to me was the Dolphins, just because of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and they've been one of the highest scoring offenses in the past years, and the fact that their defense isn't really shut down. They play a lot of high-scoring games. The Dolphins was the first one that stood out to me, and they were the second highest-scoring team last year. So that's the one I'd go with.
I was about to say, you guys know who was the highest-scoring team last season?
Dallas.
Dallas was number 1. San Francisco technically number 2, and then Miami number 3.
Oh, it was number. Okay.
Which is wild for Dallas, considering they literally only had CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, that was it basically, and they just threw the ball all over the place. Dak Prescott put up these massive numbers. The Cowboys this year are 50 to 1 to be the highest scoring offense in the NFL. I'm not telling you that you should be expecting that, but like people, I guess, are expecting that based upon the drop off at running back
and probably the bad vibes around a team that doesn't have Dak signed.
Fair, fair and legitimate, but 50 to 1 odds, I personally would put a little bit of coin down on that. That being said, if I was betting on the team that I think will be the highest scoring in the NFL this year, I'm not trying to be a homer here, but I think it's true. I would go with the Chiefs at 18 to 1. I just think it's crazy that you're getting those kinds of odds for a team that has Patrick Mahomes, as of today, a healthy Travis Kelce, a better offensive line, and significantly improved wide receivers. And I think their defense is going to be slightly worse than it was last year. I don't think it's going to be bad, but last year they were arguably the best defense in the league. This year I think you're going to be like 10th best defense in the NFL. That means you're going to have to score more points. It's going to push Patrick Mahomes to throw the football a little bit more often. I think there's a decent chance they finish as the league's highest scoring offense. Alex, I also answered this one in our Circa pick for today. The last winless team in the NFL Who do you guys think will be the last winless team in the NFL? The Patriots are the favorite currently at 4-1. And then after that, it's the Titans, the Panthers, the Vikings, the Broncos. Commanders and Giants are at 13-1. And then the Cardinals and the Saints are next up in this in terms of the final winless team. Who are you going with in this regard?
I love your Saints pick, the 20-1, but to go different, I'll say the Commanders. I don't know if the Commanders win a game until they take on the Panthers on October 20th.
Oof.
And maybe the Saints go further than that, but I can see it being a close game with the Giants and Commanders. I'll give the slight edge to Brian Dable and not a rookie quarterback. Bengals, even with the bad vibes, I'd give them the shot. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison. Browns, Ravens. I think they start the season, the Commanders, 0-5 before they pick up their first victory.
Another one that I found to be pretty interesting in this regard is the Giants. Now, they start out the season against Minnesota. They legitimately might win this game. But after that, on the road at Washington, I think Washington's going to be a little better than people are giving them credit for right now. I don't think they're going to be good, but like a frisky 7-10 with some interesting moments from Jaden Daniels, very much on the table. On the road at Cleveland, and then Dallas, Seattle, Cincinnati, Philly, Pittsburgh, Washington, Carolina. Dude, a 0-8 start with getting their first win against Washington in Week 9, very much on the table for the New York Giants. I'm not predicting it, but given the odds at 13-1, kind of like that. Yeah. Giants would be another team that I would be pinpointing here.
I'm looking at some of the schedules right now, and I was looking at the Patriots, and that's the one that just stood out to me. Obviously, the Patriots are a terrible team, but Bengals, that's a loss. Seahawks, I could see them maybe squeaking one out, but I doubt it.
Seattle might be good this year.
Jets lost, 49ers lost, Dolphins lost, Texans lost. You're getting into week 6 and it's not looking good. So I think I'd just stick with the Patriots in this scenario.
I'll tell you another one. Vikings.
That week 1 game is going to determine this potentially.
Because if they don't win that week 1 game, I don't know if they've got a shot to win until they take on the Jaguars.
Is insane.
Yeah.
They've got the Giants and then San Francisco, Houston, Green Bay, the Jets, Detroit, the Rams, Indy, Jacksonville, and then Tennessee is a little bit of a reprieve. So, their first 10 games,
you can make an argument
8 of them are against playoff teams.
They might win 2 games because then they take on the Bears twice, the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Lions.
It's going to be tough.
Not having an actual quarterback, and this is why I think so many people have backed away from Justin Jefferson in fantasy football drafts, because I don't know what that team is going to look like.
All right, a couple more questions for you guys. Which new running back teams that switched teams this past offseason will finish this season with the most rushing yards? So some of the examples that you could go with here. Saquon, Henry, Josh Jacobs, who you mentioned just a little bit ago, now with the Packers, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Gus Edwards, Devin Singletary, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift. There were a lot of running backs that switched teams, as you can see, this past offseason. Alex, among them, who are you betting on to have the most rushing yards this season?
I think a lot of people are going to go with probably the favorite in Saquon Barkley. I think if I were to put money down, it would be either DeAndre Swift with the Chicago Bears or Josh Jacobs with the Packers.
That's mine. I love Josh Jacobs going into this season.
I think either of those 2 teams are going to embrace the fact that they actually have a running game. The Packers in the past, they've loved it, but Aaron Jones gets hurt, and then you don't really have much beyond that. I don't trust Gus Edwards because he's not going to stay healthy. I don't trust Devin Singletary with the Giants. Pollard's an interesting one. I just don't know who he is. But, man, if I were to put money down, it's either Jacobs or DeAndre Swift.
I love Jacobs. I love Josh Jacobs going into this season. I think he's the guy that I would be betting on here. I think he's super undervalued in fantasy drafts. So I'll be curious to see where he goes in our 101 league later on this evening. Josh Jacobs would be, no doubt about it, my pick here.
It was 2 seasons ago that he led the league in rushing, right? So I feel like that's a pretty easy pick. If he just goes back to what he did a couple of years ago with the Raiders, he could definitely do that again. I like DeAndre Swift as well. That was one that I was looking up too. I could see him having a big year. So I think I'm with you. I'd go with Josh Jacobs or DeAndre Swift as well.
I do think that Derrick Henry is somebody that's getting undervalued this season.
See, I think he's just for the touchdowns, though.
I think I
wouldn't go for yardage.
Yeah.
He feels a lot like what Raheem Mostert was last year, to where it's like you're going to probably see 15 to 18 touchdowns. There's not going to be a whole lot of rushing yards.
He's Alex. That's Grant. I'm BK. Hey, Kerry Davis is going to be out at Hot Shots this week. You can join Scott Rizzuto from The Rizzuto Show and Kerry Davis on Thursday at Hot Shots in St. Charles, out in my neck of the woods. Come watch the NFL's kickoff Thursday night football game. Get signed up for some 101 101 ESPN prize giveaways, cold Bud Light, all of that available to you over at Hot Shots in St. Charles Thursday night, 6:30 to 8:30 with CD and Riz. It's all brought to you by Bud Light. Coming up next, we're going to give you a chance to win a pair of tickets, a 4-pack of tickets, in fact, this time for next Tuesday's Budweiser Bash game between the Cardinals and the Reds. And we'll hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN.
run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Hey, join Randy Carricker on Monday, September the 9th from 4 to 6 o'clock at the Fenton Bar and Grill. Come see the best servers in town, bartenders in the area. Enjoy outdoor deck, cold drinks, and chow down on their best original trashed wings in St. Louis. Plus, you can get signed up for some 101 ESPN giveaways. Randy Carricker at the Fenton Bar and Grill, Monday. Learn more at 101ESPN.com. Also, right now is your chance to score a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash for the Cardinals versus the Reds. It's the final Bud Bash game of the season and features a limited edition Chris Carpenter bobblehead giveaway. Text in coming up here in just a second, 314-399-9646, and you will win the 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game between the Cardinals and the Reds. Alex, for our question today, the winner, the way to win the tickets. Earlier today, I said there was one team that I would bet on to be this year's highest scoring offense in the NFL. Can you name that team? Who was the team that I said will be the highest scoring offense in the NFL this year? Texter number 101 at 314-399-9646 is getting that 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game for the Cardinals versus the Reds. All right, to finish things out today, Alex, let's go back to the big news, Blues related, which is that Torey Krug is going to miss the entirety of the 2024 season. He has decided to get surgery on that pre-arthritic condition in his ankle. Alex, when you saw this news earlier today, your first thought was blank.
You feel bad for Krug because obviously you never want to see somebody's potential career end because of an injury, but I think it made the most sense for the Blues. You saw the writing on the wall with Torey Krug. I think the first thing I thought of was who's taking care of this power play next season for St. Louis, because Torey Krug, although he has not been great for the Blues, he still was the best option for your top power play, and now it does feel like they're going to have to figure out who's filling that void, and you're going to have to squint to see it until somebody takes that spot.
Grant, your first thought when you saw that Krug's going to be out for the entirety of the season?
Yeah, well, it went to Scott Perunovich, and just, you know, it's a little bit disappointing that you go back a year or two ago and you think about, you know, who would be Torey Krug's replacement, whether that be if he was traded, if he waived his no trade clause, or, you know, in a situation like this. And the answer was pretty clear cut that it would be Scott Perunovich. And now you look at it and it's pretty clear cut that it probably won't be. And I'm also really intrigued by this training camp more than I ever have been before because of all the competition that's going to be there for guys like Scott Perunovich. I think everybody's going to have a fair chance, and super excited to see what happens in training camp. And I think there's going to be a lot of storylines in the preseason this year when it comes to that topic of that competition.
My first thought was, what's this mean for the power play? Yeah. I think we all kind of assumed he was likely to be out, but now that it's real and now that we know for sure that Krug is going to miss the entire season, what does that look like? Who's going to replace him? And if it's Justin Falk, which we all kind of assume that's probably the most likely scenario, who replaces Justin Falk on the second unit? Yeah. So I think that's going to be one of the most enticing, one of the most compelling storylines going into camp. Cardinals back in action tonight as well against the Milwaukee Brewers. A tough matchup. Matz versus Savali. I've got the Cardinals losing this one once again. I will be curious to see how Steven Matz looks. Alex, who you got tonight?
I got the Brewers. I don't think it's going to look good for Steven Matz tonight.
Sonny Gray on the mound tomorrow. We will be back then to discuss whatever happens tonight with the Cardinals versus the Brewers. For Alex Ferrario and Grant Francis, who did a fantastic job filling in for T-Bone today, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Fastlane coming up next here on 101 ESPN.